This is your 2-minute warning. It's actually probably 1.5. Less than one, I've been informed by the Vice Mayor.
Steve Jobs actually says it.
Steve Jobs. Right. Being 6 o'clock, we are in session. Would you all please rise as you are able and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. Hand over heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like the city attorney to just make a brief comment before we have roll call.
Thank you, Mayor Lowe. The City Council is required to receive notice at the start of a regular meeting when a council member needs to participate at a meeting remotely for just cause under AB 2449, which was the subject of my presentation at a prior council meeting. So this evening, I do need to notify you that Councilmember Farrar Rivas has informed the city that she has just cause to participate remotely due to illness, and therefore she will be appearing via Zoom.
Thank you very much. Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gurney,
Here.
Councilmember Wellender,
Here.
Councilmember Ding,
Here.
Councilmember Farrar Rivas. Here. Mayor Lowe.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we will have public comment using Zoom and in person tonight. There is no report from closed session, as there was no closed session. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the agenda, please.
Move to approve.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Comments?
I had one item on the agenda that I wanted to see, to make sure that it had been, addition had made in regards to our discussions around commissions. So that was item number 9.1, that in regards to the Fire and Safety Commission, that there still would be one other commissioner that would be appointed by myself at a later date. Because it says right now consideration for an alternate youth member positions, but also there would be also one more position.
Okay, at the time we bring up that item, it is on the regular calendar. I think your comments would be in order at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding the agenda? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Gurney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wellender,
Yes.
Councilmember Ding,
Aye.
Councilmember Farrar Rivas.
Aye.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you so much. At this point, we entertain comments from the public. Please remember that these are comments regarding items that are not on the agenda, and we will limit them to 3 minutes. Please come forward if you have an item. Thank you.
Try to get this to where I can, all right, okay, sounds cool. Maybe over here. Josette Brose Eicher, 1110 Loma Court. Our grassroots citizens group, Wake Up Sonoma, is dedicated to keeping our community whole and inclusive, and we need your support to continue our efforts. I would like to tell you all about our upcoming fundraiser. All proceeds from the evening will go towards Wake Up Sonoma's effort and ongoing work. We've recently applied as a 501c nonprofit, so we will have that. With your ticket purchase, you'll enjoy live music, delicious food, wine, and dessert. You will have the opportunity to bid on some incredible items at our silent auction, donated by local businesses and individuals. This event is on June 4th from 4:30 to 7:30 at Westerbeck Ranch. It is generously sponsored by Wendy Westerbeck and her husband Ted Buckland. For details and tickets, just go to wakeupsonoma.com and click on events. I hope to see some of you there. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dave Eicher, Loma Court. I want to bring up something in front of the City Council, and it's mainly going for the Planning Commission to address, but I want to let you know as well my ask here. And given that we've had in the past, such as the old Truck and Auto property that had a cyclone fence on it for a long time, and an eyesore, and then we have other properties now with the cyclone fence. Hopefully it's not too long. But I would suggest that the city look at putting in the conditions of approval for construction projects, that they would have a construction management plan and a construction completion schedule. I forwarded to you a minutes from a Piedmont Planning Commission meeting that had some details for a specific project there in Piedmont. And you may want to consider maybe not citywide, but maybe just for the plaza or plaza plus historical properties, or maybe just commercial development. But I hope you take a look at this, so to try to, when we have construction moving forward, it looks like we're going to have more of this happening now that the COVID is done and development is getting back in the swing, that we reduce the amount of time that we have an eyesore during the construction process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please.
Gail Miller, 162 Clay Street. I'm here again about Traintown and the parking situation. And I understood, Mayor Lowe, that you were going to check with the school district about parking. We have not heard anything. It's a mess down there. On Saturday afternoon, a car pulled out of the low-income housing and there was an accident. It is an accident waiting to happen. The bike store, their bike lanes are non-existent on that side of Broadway because cars are parked there almost in the ditch. And it's an accident waiting to happen with people running across Broadway. So please, I wish you would inform us if you've contacted the school district or what can be done. Thank you.
Any further items from the public? Anybody on Zoom wishing to speak?
No, Mayor Lowe.
All right. So, comments from the public is now closed. Thank you so much for your comments, everyone. This evening we have a special meeting dedication that I would like to present. But prior to doing that, are there any additional meeting dedications? Yes. Yes. So it's my honor tonight, honestly, to dedicate this meeting to Nancy Parmalee. As many of you know, Nancy passed last week, and she was an inspiration to all of us, especially, as a woman running for city council. You look for role models, and I certainly couldn't have looked too much further than in Sonoma for Nancy Parmalee. I remember her coming to meetings and seeing her around. I've received so many wonderful stories from people, but I'd like to share just a little bit for those of you who are not as familiar, and invite her family to say something afterwards if they so choose. Nancy Parmalee was one of Sonoma's greatest advocates. She passed away on April 14th, just a few days shy of her 91st birthday. She grew up in the Berkeley Hills, where she watched the building of the Golden Gate Bridge and many of the San Francisco skyscrapers. She met her future husband, Robert Parmalee, while attending the University of California at Berkeley. I have to add, go Bears. It's a requirement if you're a Cal graduate, as I am. So, they moved to Santa Rosa briefly and then permanently to Sonoma in 1957. Soon Bob became a well-respected Sonoma historian and Nancy a key political mover and shaker. She was also a superb quilter, something I will tell you I will not be able to do. And so I'm so in admiration of people who can sit there and quietly create things that require so much precision. Her quilts are stunning, and they've won numerous awards at the Sonoma County Fair, at the State Fair, the Houston National Quilt Show. Her quilts are prized by her family and adorn their beds and walls. Nancy and her husband Bob enjoyed traveling. They went around the world several times. In the last 40 years, they traveled primarily by cruise ships. And while Sonoma was their main love, they also found happiness in Alaska and their cabin in the Sierra at Pinecrest. Nancy is survived by her children, Mark, Lori, and Janine, her grandchildren, Jay, Jaron, Elaine, Scott, and her one great-grandson, Tegan. She was preceded in death by her husband, Robert. There will be a memorial service at Sonoma United Methodist Church on Saturday, April 29th, and I would like to dedicate this meeting to former Mayor Nancy Parmalee. Is there anyone who would like to add anything to this at all? You're welcome to.
I would like.
Let's have,
please.
please come forward.
Okay. Yeah, I would just like to let you know how happy she was dedicating so much of her effort to the city of Sonoma. I mean, this really was sort of what made her whole. She loved her family, obviously, because we're great. But she loved the city of Sonoma. She was a quiet and gentle force. So when you were describing her quilting, I was thinking, you're describing how she was on the city council. She was just sitting there, sort of picking away at things, thinking about things, putting big pictures together. She said she didn't always vote the way that she wanted to. She voted the way that she felt her constituents felt that she needed them to. And you know, I wish in our political climate we had more Nancys around, because I think she really made it was fun to have the job you have at that time. And so I guess when things get tough, remember it was fun and can be fun. And, you know, she said the things that you are doing to make the city of Sonoma better are the same things she was working on. It's just a little tougher now. It's not quite as easy to pass things, but I guess I want to thank the community. If you're listening, you really meant a lot to her, and hopefully she meant a lot to you too. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Ding, I know you wanted to say a few words
Yes.
as well. Please.
Thank you. And just like Janine, that thank you so much. And I believe, although Nancy has passed away, but today I feel like she is still listening to us, because she told me she never missed any of the city council meeting. It is a part of her life. The reason why I'm sitting here, and majorly encouraged by our community, based on my background, my experience, it's impossible and a chance for me sitting in the city council. This community, including the Nancy Parmalee and Robert Parmalee. When I, the first time, wanted to participate and running for the city council meeting this position, both of them fully support me. Both of them are the first people to sign in for my petition. And at that time, I still remember they went to live in the senior center. They switched in the senior center and they in the main home in the east part. So that I got encouraged, and finally, I successful elected. And also, Robert also tell me, you should knock the door, and you should remember and each people's name. Because he said, Nancy can remember everybody after she met them. So now I try my best, I did, although I couldn't remember each of them. Nancy and Robert is our the legacy of the city. And what I want to say is everyone in our community needed to carry it over, just like the torch, generation by generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Lori, please.
Lori Gallion, 434 Rosalie Drive, here in Sonoma, former council member and mayor. And I say that in the context of this quote. I think I really was grilled by Nancy when she said about endorsement. I don't take this lightly. Are you, what type of council member are you going to be? And what will it be like if you were mayor of the city? And I think that was one of the toughest, endorsements that I worked for. She was all business, and Robert was the same. And she loved, the one thing that I think she loved most of all was actually being on the traffic committee. I mean, this woman was passionate about being on the traffic committee, and probably one of the longer standing, members of that particular committee. But above all, their wisdom, their history, their passion for this community is something that I will never forget. And she was a mentor, like you said, Mayor Lowe. She was a mentor to women who were in this position. So she will be missed.
Thank you so much, Lori. Well, thank you. I think please share our sentiments with the family, Janine, and know that you're all in our hearts and thoughts, and honored to make this dedication of this meeting in memory of your mom. Thank you. Okay, moving on. I don't believe we have any presentations tonight. Council members' reports and comments. This is where the council members who are appointed to various boards and committees and so forth have an opportunity to let the public know what they've been up to. So, who would like to begin? Everybody's ducking.
I will.
Oh, please. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Go ahead.
Okay, so on the 13th, I attended the Tourism Improvement District meeting, and this is the organization that is promoting Sonoma for tourism traction. And really nothing new to report since the last meeting, other than the fact they're moving ahead with the new visitor's guide, which they say is a very popular item. So they're printing 50,000 copies. And otherwise, they're looking at some of the things that other communities are doing. They're talking about maybe a joint meeting with Healdsburg. Anyway, they're moving forward. And then following that, I attended the Library Advisory Board, and they are somewhat focused on trying to attract more attendance, particularly with the disadvantaged and the Hispanic community. And they're looking at issues of transportation to and from the library. And one of the new elements that they are introducing is a immediate translation phone line that will allow them to communicate with non-English speaking folks using an interpreter on the phone that's available to them immediately, basically. Otherwise, library is still there. They do have some building issues, and I'm working with the city manager on taking a look and see what our involvement with that is. That concludes my reports.
Thank you. Mr. Willender.
Yes,
I have two items. One was not an appointed commission, but it is of interest, and that is on Monday, I did attend the school public safety forum at the Boys and Girls Club. That was a solicitation to get input on the very important topic of school safety. And my greatest takeaway from that meeting was there appears to be, at least with those that attended that evening, some interest in reinstituting the site resource officer, maybe positioned a little bit differently or clothed differently, but there seemed to be some consensus that they are interested, the public's interested in re-engaging with a site officer. The second item I was just going to say is one of our own commissions for which I'm a liaison for, and that is the Pros Commission met last night, and I just wanted to do two things. One, to send encouragement that it's functioning well, and I would also like to encourage the public to participate. This is the Parks and Open Space and Recreation Commission that I think is of value, and I would strongly encourage anybody and everybody that has interest in how our parks and open space and recreation evolve. So those are the two items I wanted to report.
Very good. Thank you for going to all those. Mr. Ding.
Thank you, Mayor Lo. I would like to add something because the last city council meeting I already report my attending to Sonoma Valley Groundwater Sustainability the agency. And we review the last year's performance because the last year is year one, starting to charge and users for the groundwater. That is a historic event. So then the next thing is, I suppose our city is a part of the stakeholder for this organization. Usually, and we made contributions for the past 5 years for our contribution of $25,000. Technically, we were not going to pay any more after this organization started to charge the user of groundwater. But for some reason, financial reason, the groundwater agencies and request that the city and continue to pay $25,000. Basically, during this meeting, I didn't agree. I said I would like to assess, this importance. So later, I would like to discuss with our city manager and the public the work, see how we can make the right decision and save each dollar from the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrara Rivas, were you able to attend anything remotely or?
Yes, I was. I actually attended the Sonoma Clean Power Authority meeting remotely, and that was on April 3rd. And one of the things I wanted to make sure people were aware of that is going on with Sonoma Clean Power right now is that there is a grant from Calpine Community Benefits of $750,000 that nonprofits can apply to. They will award, the awards will range between $5,000 and $20,000. And qualifying projects must fall within the following outlined priority focus areas: advancement of renewable energy research and planning, energy and environmental education, clean energy in disadvantaged communities, and green workforce development. And then in addition to that, I also did attend in person the one day in the last 20 days that I was negative, the Climate Action Committee. I just wanted to report the Climate Action Committee had 5 ad hoc committees associated with the committee that were all meeting over the past quarter to bring specific budget proposals and also priorities for each of the 5 ad hoc areas. And so that is moving along well, and that also that there will be a special meeting of the Climate Action Committee on May 31st to discuss a little bit more in depth all of those different ad hoc priorities and how that will all fit into the overall climate action plan. And just as a reminder that the city of Sonoma does have a resolution to be net zero by 2030. So, and then last but not least, the item I brought up earlier was not to discuss that, but was to change the notes. That's why I brought it up during the notes section, to change the notes to reflect that we still have a commissioner, an alternate, and a youth position. It just states the alternate and the youth position.
Okay, then we'll see if we can handle it at some point.
Different time, yes.
Thank you.
Wanted to make that clarification.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I was attended the LAFCO meeting where we voted to consolidate many fire districts under the Gold Ridge Fire District. I see a smile from the back from our fire chief. I think every fire chief in the county was at that meeting to make sure we did our job properly. And we listened to a lot of testimony regarding how the volunteer fire and the professional are working together, and how this has been in the works for a long time. So I was really pleased to be part of that vote to consolidate those districts and to give good service to the northern part of the county. I was also involved at the SCTA, Sonoma County Transportation Authority, which has been discussing, and it's in the Press Democrat today, you can look at the article, some sort of funding measure to deal with climate. Very apropos to what Ms. Ferrar-Rivas brought up. So they're looking at something to help us in the county address that in some material way by raising some funds, either through parcel tax or some other sort of revenue measure. So that's in the works, and lots more discussion to take place on that before it's ready to hit prime time. But those were my two meetings last week. All right, so moving along. There were so many meetings, my screen froze. Great. We have the city manager comments.
Just one thing, Mayor and Council. I want to congratulate the Planning Commission and the City Council and the staff and our attorney that we are now a fully certified housing element. We received a letter, official letter from Housing Community Development of the state earlier this month. So we are one of 16 entities in the 9-county Bay Area that have completed this. And I was talking today with a council member in Los Altos Hills, and they are just starting. So, because they don't know what quite to do. So, thank you for the hard work by everybody and for the work of this council.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's shocking that there's so few that have completed it, but I'm very proud that we're among the few. That's great. Anything from our city attorney tonight?
I have no comments tonight, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Let's move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine, will be acted upon by a single motion. If you have any separate discussion of these items that you require, then I would ask you to please pull that item. If it's just a simple question, we can answer it, but if it's going to take some discussion, then we might have to pull it. So I'm asking, are there any items to be pulled from the consent calendar? I see Mr. Ding looking at...
Mayor Lo,
Yes, please.
thank you. Now 7.5.
7.5.
I don't want to pull out, but I just want to say thank you. You work out because we totally understand right now the market and supply in the chain, material and the price increased. Only thing that I hope and we can, carry it out within a contract with the contractor, move forward completely, because Depot Park is important part of our little community, and we try to, because originally we just got an $80,000 budget, dramatically increased. Make the sense. I made a phone call, and everything we need to quickly carry it out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other items to be pulled or
Quick
comments? Yeah.
question on one, and just pull one, please.
Okay.
My quick question is on 7.3, and I was just curious because it's recommended that we combine the funds from both the 22-23 that was identified in the amount, but there was not an amount identified for, it was identified for 23-24, but I was wondering what that amount is, and as far as the total that we'll be able to expend on road repair.
We received $228,000 in fiscal year 22-23, and we didn't do a slurry seal. We did last year, but we used the funds from the year before, so we have banked those funds, and we're going to combine them with this year's, and we'll have $256,000 coming to us this year.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great question. Thank you. And the item you wish to pull, sir?
Would be 7.4.
7.4. Okay. Are there any other items to be pulled or any other questions, quick questions of staff? All right. I'm sorry, Ms. Farrar-Rivas, yes,
Yeah,
please.
thank you. I have a quick question. It's a combination of the 7 point, let me make sure, the Chase Street Bridge, 7.4, and then also the expenditure report, understanding that we are looking at for 7.4 to have a contract with Ghirardelli, but at the same time, I saw on our expenditure report, which looked like it was under the Chase Street Bridge item, that we were already paying the money. So I was just kind of the order of that I was a little confused about. So I was wondering, just to clarify, if there's other work we're already doing with Ghirardelli on that project.
I'm looking at staff just and there
There is
some quizzical looks.
just
and-
naming who's going to cover it now.
Okay, and now we know, okay.
I think we're
Ms.
going to
Hart.
have a larger discussion about the overall contract, but to answer Councilwoman Rivas's question, because there was such a long time between when we did this RFP and when we knew the job was going to start, because we were waiting for our authorization of federal money, we executed a small pre-job contract with Ghirardelli to have them help us work through the process to get the award. So we didn't want to award the whole $500,000 contract if we weren't going to have a project, but we asked them to just, with their expertise, help us get to the place where we had a contract. So that's what that is.
Very helpful. And as I drive by there all the time, I was like, oh, they've already started on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. These are good questions. Okay, seeing no other questions, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of 7.4?
I would like to put motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. Call the roll, please. Oh, any public comment? My apologies. Any on Zoom?
No, Mayor Lowe.
No. Okay, so please call the roll.
Just a note before I do that, we will make an addition to the minutes that Councilmember Farrar-Rivas was referring to, adding the item of the commissioner appointment and rather than just alternate in youth. We'll make that change to the minutes.
That'd be great.
Vice Mayor Gurney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wellender,
Yes.
Councilmember Ding,
Aye.
Councilmember Farrar-Rivas,
Aye.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
And when, Ms. Barb, when we get to the subject of committees and so forth, can we just say that again in that item, just because it was mentioned in regards to that item, the minutes and so forth?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I just want some clarity because I'm a little confused as to what happened here, so. And that would be helpful to me. Thank you so much. All right. So we have, now we are on item 7.4, and looking for a staff report on 7.4. Mr. Berger.
Good evening, Mayor Lowe and council members. Tonight, staff is requesting that you adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement with Ghirardelli and Associates, Inc. for the construction management, inspection, materials testing services for the Chase Street Bridge replacement project. Federal project number CML 5114016 for an amount not to exceed $500,692.16. The little background, Chase Street Bridge is a timber structure with steel plates on asphalt concrete AC paved deck. The bridge is located on Chase Street over Nathanson Creek between Broadway and Austin Avenue in the city of Sonoma. The city has been approved to receive Federal Highway Bridge Program HPB funds for the replacement of the existing bridge. The project will replace the existing structurally deficient bridge and provide a safe creek crossing for drivers, bicyclists, pedestrians, and has been approved to receive $1.601 and $743 million. $1,601,743 of Federal Highway Bridge Program grant funding. The construction contract to build the bridge will be out to bid with an anticipated award date of May 15th, 2023. The construction management, inspection, testing services scope of work for the project consists of a resident engineer, construction inspection services, public outreach and assistance, materials and source inspection and testing, stormwater pollution prevention, quality assurance, construction staking, quality assurance, biological monitoring, arbor services. A construction management, inspection, and materials testing request for proposals and RFP for the project was advertised on July 25th, 2022. Proposals were due on September 8th, providing 6 weeks for consultants to respond and prepare proposals. There was a high interest and general awareness of the RFP, as the RFP was downloaded early and included approximately 22 potential prime consultants. The city received 3 proposals from highly qualified consulting firms to perform the work listed in the table below. The RFP process followed federal aid guidelines. It included a disadvantaged business enterprise DBE goal of 8%. The 3 companies are in the table, and they are Ghirardelli and Associates out of Richmond, MNS Engineers out of Oakland, California, and Coastland out of Santa Rosa. Proposals were reviewed by Public Works staff, supplemented with on-call consultant Consort Inc. In addition, each proposer participated in an in-person interview with questions and answers as part of the evaluation process. Both proposal and interview were scored based on published criteria in the RFP. Based on the scores tabulated between all reviewers, Ghirardelli Associates Inc. was deemed the most qualified for the project. A draft agreement with Ghirardelli Inc. is attached. Caltrans is performing a financial review of the proposed contract. After receipt of the Caltrans financial review letter and resolution of any findings, the city may execute the agreement. There's some information in there on budget that I could go into if anybody's interested.
All right, so Mr. Willender, I believe this was your item. Have your questions been answered, or would you like to ask a few more? Yes, please. Microphone, please. All right.
Question number 1, on the Newcomb pedestrian bridge, do we retain a similar construction management company at this level of investment?
Friar Creek?
I'm sorry, Friar Creek, yeah, at the end of Newcomb. In other words, I guess I'm unfamiliar with such a high investment on what seems to be a relatively small bridge. And we're talking $500,000, and I realize that if the execution or the bid process results for this will be similar to the HVAC for Depot Park, then we're probably going to be in $2-3 million, and I can see where the monies are coming from. But my fear, I shouldn't say fear, that's wrong. I do have a concern about ultimately what the cost is going to be, but based upon that 1.6 that we're receiving from HBRR, this construction management fee is 31% of that, and that just seems crazy. And I'm wondering why we can't either do some of the oversight that's been illustrated here in the scope for the RFP Exhibit A, whether or not some of that could have been executed in-house, or if this is just something that Caltrans or the state public, whatever, demands that we retain a consultant at this financial investment.
Yeah, and this is a great question because the numbers do seem a little off. And the way that we bid the job, the bid numbers will probably, the actual bid numbers will probably be higher than the bid numbers that were submitted with all of our state and federal paperwork. So there's one reason why it may seem a little bit low. And then the way that these jobs are created too by professional services on federal and state federally funded projects, they're scrutinized quite highly at the federal and state level. So there is some scrutiny done on hourly rates. The consultants know this going in, and these projects are expensive. Yeah, so when we actually see bids, we'll probably see something shaking around in around the 25 to 20% neighborhood, and could be lower. And just for some reason, it seems like HVAC contracts are coming in real high right now, and so we can take that for what it is. But we have done a little bit of research on HVAC, and it seems like the HVAC numbers are uncharacteristically coming in high right now. Yeah, and if the numbers do come in, there's a process, as is outlined in this agenda item summary. There is a process. We do repetition to the feds and the state for both, well, for the construction contract. The consultant services contract has already been.
So the short and the long of it, what would be your best guess as far as the financial contribution from the city for this bridge improvement?
That would be 88% of 500,000 plus $2.2 million. So 2.7 million, 88% of that, or 12%.
I'm sorry. So I thought the feds were funding part of that, like 1.6.
Feds are funding 88% of the project.
Oh, of the project.
Correct.
So we're out 12% plus this construction management.
Correct. And the construction management is a known.
Yes.
So
yes.
the 12% of that would be 12,000 for 500,000, $60,000. Yeah. And just so you know, staff will have a significant role on this project. There will be a lot of management that we have to do in the office. We won't have a hands off, and the construction manager will have his hands full with the issues in the field and the financials of the job. But then we have to monitor the overall budget. We have to stay in touch with all the different changes of conditions on the site to make sure that we're very relevant in all the decisions made in the field. Yeah.
My last question, it's just, I may not have been around, but I'm curious, the design evolution of that was something that was handled by a civil engineer in-house, reviewed by Public Works, didn't come before planning, or did not come before design review. I'm just curious what we're going to end up with.
Design started on this job over 10 years ago, and
Okay.
I have talked to Wayne Wyrick about it because he was part of the design originally. He asked me just recently why it's taking me so long to get this project to where it is right now. But the way that these projects evolve is there's always and this is a Caltrans standard. There's a policy of you go through, you do a planning study to figure out what type of bridge and type selection that you want to do. Typically, the consultant engineer designer will give you 3 different alternatives, possibly the owner, the state, and very little federal involvement, but they pick one, and then we start the project. And it never goes well. Architecture involved on some of these jobs, but typically those are the bigger, more high-profile ones. And the state has criteria, though, to which the project has to meet in order to receive the funding. And so it's a fairly stringent recipe that the job has to follow as it's becoming a project. Then you go through, and the city's been involved. I can't speak for the last 9 years, but the city has been, typically the city's involved at the 30% submittal, the 65% submittal, and then I got involved pretty much at the 90% submittal. And we went through and did a very rigorous, just following up on Councilmember Farrar Rivas's question. One of the reasons that we had Consor involved was to do a constructability review. And they did a really good constructability review of the plans and specs. And that just, pretty much put the cherry on the top of this round. And that, in addition to myself and staff, we really went through the ringer on this and tried to really just tighten up all the documents in this last phase.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. My final comment is simply I was standing on the bridge 2 nights ago. A single car went by. The bridge shook. This is a good project. Time to replace.
Thank you. Any other
Appreciate
questions?
you. None from me. Anyone else have any questions? Any questions from the public regarding this project? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay.
For
And the
sure,
third, Patricia, thank you so much. Any discussion regarding this motion? All right. Seeing none, if the clerk will call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Gurney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wellender,
Yes.
Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Lowe, Councilmember Farrar Rivas,
Aye.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Good questions. Thank you for the on-the-job reporting from the Chase Street Bridge. All right. Moving along, we have a public hearing for discussion, consideration, and possible action to introduce an ordinance amending the Sonoma Municipal Code, Title 19, to move Section 19.50.090 accessory dwelling units from Chapter 19.50 special use standards to new Chapter 19.45 accessory dwelling units, and amending the section to allow second-story ADUs without a use permit and to comply with new state laws, and finding the proposed amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Public Resources Code Section 21080.17 and Section 15061B3, General Rule of the CEQA Guidelines. And I'm sure you're all following that so intently, and I will turn this over to Ms. Tierney to tell us about this item. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. I'll do my best to keep this as short and sweet as possible. I think that the ordinance itself appears more complicated than it is. With the repeal and the replace, it looks like there's a lot more changes and it's a little hard to track. But the general intent of the ordinance before the council this evening is to make it easier and more flexible for residents in the city of Sonoma to build accessory dwelling units, and really recognizing the importance of ADUs in the city's ability to meet our RHNA numbers. In doing our housing report year after year, ADUs really represent a very important part of our housing plan and have helped us meet our RHNA numbers year after year after year. When accessory dwelling units were first introduced many years ago, they were originally called second units, and it was a really new concept. And so a lot of the rules that we have on the books represent the fact that this was something new at the time. These aren't new anymore. This is something very routine. The state is telling us how important they are, and they're to be approved ministerially. And so that's really the essence of what we're trying to do. A lot of the direction has come from the Planning Commission. Currently, any ADU that doesn't meet our standards is required to obtain a use permit from the Planning Commission. And over again, the Planning Commission was giving feedback to staff, why are we looking at this? And so we went through a lengthy process with the Planning Commission to develop this ordinance that's before you this evening, and more than happy to be the one to present this to you this evening. So the current ordinance was adopted in 2021, and the primary intention there was to bring the city's ordinance into compliance with state law. And we didn't really do a deep dive into what is this and how is it important and how do we make it easy for staff. In implementing the ordinance, there were a lot of challenges just in the readability. I would very routinely have long conversations with our former senior planner, Rob Jesland. And if Rob Jesland and I are having trouble reading the ordinance and figuring out how to implement it, there's a problem. And so one of the goals is really just to make this as clear as possible so we can encourage people to go through the process. Additionally, there have been a couple new state laws, AB 2221 and Senate Bill 897, which have given direction to the city to make some additional amendments which are included in this ordinance tonight. So as I mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission has expressed a desire for really to not look at ADUs, that two-story ADUs and issues with size that we've been running into don't rise to the level of requiring review by the Planning Commission and can be either handled by staff or through the building permit process. We held a study session with the Planning Commission on February 16th and looked at establishing a ministerial permitting process for second-story attached and detached ADUs. We discussed design criteria for those second-story ADUs and discussed eliminating the parking standards altogether, as well as other suggestions for streamlining and clarification. And we went through some real-world case studies of ADUs that went before the Planning Commission and did require use permits. It was a really helpful exercise. The direction from the Planning Commission was not just to make the changes where ADUs are now, which is currently in our special use standards. It's really buried way down in the code, but we are recommending to move this up to a new section to highlight the importance of ADUs and to make it a lot clearer and faster for people to find the required information. So we would move all of the standards up from 1950-090, very, very buried, to new chapter 1945. We are recommending the elimination of parking requirements altogether. The state law prohibits parking requirements within a half mile of a transit stop. So really the only portion of the city where we would require parking is a very small portion of the east side, where there's probably the most parking in the whole city. So that's where the recommendation to eliminate the parking requirement comes from. We would allow second-story ADUs by right, both attached and detached, and we are recommending the elimination of size restrictions based on the size of the primary residence. We currently have a limitation that a detached ADU can only be 50% of the size of the primary residence. We have many small cottages in Sonoma that are 1,000 square feet, and that would limit the size of an ADU. That is, I'm sorry, that's the wrong PowerPoint presentation. That's okay. We can shut that down real quick. Sorry, I had two with the same name. I'll just go through the ordinance really quick. Before you have a revised ordinance, and we can walk through that. Apologies for the little technology snafu. So I'll draw your attention to 1945-040. And
that's page 14?
Page 14. And here in maximum size is some recommended language from a public comment. And so in the handout before you, this is a change from what was submitted online. And then on the next page, on page 14, height D, we have the changes to allow a two-story detached ADU and an attached ADU. We're pegging the maximum allowable height to whatever is the size of the house. So we ran into this on Cordilleras a couple years ago, and they had to get a use permit because the ADU is not allowed to be taller than the residence, and the primary residence was a little bit lower. And the view of the Planning Commission was, we actually have really good standards. Our FAR standards, our site coverage, everything works really well. It doesn't matter if it's an attached ADU or a part of the house, it looks the same. So state law has asked us to allow ADUs up to 25 feet, and the Planning Commission felt that, well, that's kind of arbitrary because we allow 30 feet for the house. So our regulation would be more liberal than is required by state law as with regards to an attached ADU. So C, under height, this is what would allow a detached ADU. And so what we see a lot is a detached garage and somebody wants to put an ADU above the garage. So that currently would not only require a use permit, it also requires a variance. And a variance is a very difficult permit to approve. There are state mandated findings, and you have to find that there are unique property circumstances and characteristics such as a heritage oak tree or an oddly shaped lot, or the slope is very unique. Well, we live in a flat 2-mile city and most of the lots are square. It's very difficult to make the findings for a variance. So by adding this provision in here, anybody could build a detached garage that meets our development standards, and it's just a really great way to use space, increase density without really creating any issues. Moving down, one of the other changes to state law, when these were originally written, it was only for single-family residences. And one of the changes now allows ADUs on multifamily properties. So one of the clarifications is to just be very clear that we consider a duplex to be multifamily. And so state law allows 2 ADUs for multifamily housing. And this really builds on one of the ordinance changes that we did a couple months ago, which allowed duplexes to be a principally permitted use in single-family residence. Because of this change tonight, you really have a small 4-unit development in our single-family residential zoning district, which is, we've had many applicants who want to do such a project, and we haven't been able to approve it previously. So I think this will really help us get some much-needed housing in Sonoma. That really highlights the main changes. One of the changes that is not in this, we do have the ability to add owner occupancy requirements. Staff and the Planning Commission have elected not to include that. We badly need rental housing just as badly as owner-occupied housing, so that if the council would like to discuss that, it's something we can add back in. We just did not feel that was necessarily going to help build more housing by including that. So apologies for the technology snafu. I'm available to answer questions.
Okay, we'll take questions from the council, and then I'll open the public hearing after the questions. Any questions from the council regarding this item? Ms. Ferrar-Rivas, do you have any? I don't see you. Where'd you go?
Could you please just repeat that last? I wasn't quite clear about the rental units, where we started and where we ended up.
Yeah, so originally when second units were brought forward, there were owner occupancy requirements. So you could only do an accessory dwelling unit if the owner lived on site. That's still the case for a junior accessory dwelling unit. And the laws have kind of changed back and forth. And if the city attorney wants to chime in a little bit more, he can. But there's a new law that would allow us to add in an owner occupancy requirement. And the current ordinance does not add that in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any other questions from the council before I open the public hearing? All right, public hearing is open. Anyone who from the public have any comments or questions regarding this item? Mr. Alabak, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Fred Alabak, 19550 8th Street East. I probably should have called Christina before I went ahead and made my comments, but I'll go ahead and make them anyway. There's been a lot of talk out of the city about the illegitimacy of state housing laws, and the ADU was a state housing law, and some of the housing laws that were cited in this ordinance to have to conform to. So I was curious, whether the ADU ordinance is different than some of the other state housing laws that people in the city objected to, and whether the old ADU ordinance from the city was a way to defeat state housing laws as well. So in the ordinance it says that it is part ways to encourage the development of affordable housing. So it seems like the state's intent here is to have small square footage ADUs meet missing middle housing needs, which is about 100% area median income. But as I recall, in the SB 9 ordinance process, the Planning Commission and some members of the council said that it was impossible to build missing middle housing in Sonoma unless it was deed restricted. So that this would encourage the development of affordable housing doesn't seem to be true if it's going to conform with the previous premise from the SB 9 process that it's impossible to build in Sonoma. So I didn't see any deed restrictions on the ADUs that would make them affordable to anyone less than market rate. So I thought that was kind of problematic, and that so. Given that, and that in the city's 6-cycle housing element in the RENA site inventory, there's no very low and low income units on the east side at all, or in low density areas. So that then therefore, that no ADUs would be affordable in the low density areas. So I'm just curious of how these units are going to rent for less than market rate, and how they're going to help meet the city's arena site inventory, if that's what they really are. And so I also thought that, excuse me, I looked at the Central East Planning Area Code, and I wondered if the language in that would need to be rewritten because of the changes here in the density here. Because one of the things that it said in the Central East Planning Area is that that in order to preserve, oh, I only got 5 seconds left. So so I guess that I'll stop.
Thank you, Mr. Allenbeck. Good questions. Anyone else with any public comment?
Hi, David Eicher. First, congratulations for being one of the, seems like the few cities in California that actually have a housing element that has been approved, and I think that's great. And the ADU changes that have been imposed by the state are help to, for the city to reach the RHNA numbers, although I've not found in the past that the city has tried to thwart any development. Everything I've seen in being involved in city council the past few years is that you are looking for, affordable housing, capital A, as it's called, as well as affordable by design. I believe the ADUs can be affordable by design if they're rented out. And yes, it will be difficult to know exactly they will be rented for market rate. Will the market rate actually allow for the lower middle income? I don't know on that. But I also want to thank Council Member Welander for following up on my email when I sent out the email. At some times I look at the various municipal code changes coming up, and what I am not advocating for anything, but I'm looking in there to see this is something that doesn't quite make sense, something that is maybe ambiguous, contradictory, and so that was my comments before, that I was not advocating for anything at that time. So at this time, I think that this is very good going forward, and now to advocate for something is I don't think you need to have the restriction of a owner occupied in order to have the ADU, because you could have the main house rented out as well as the ADU rented out to separate families. And we do need a lot of rental units because a lot of people cannot afford to buy in middle and lower income. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public that is here? How about online?
Yes, I'm going to be bringing in Claire Salat.
Please.
Good evening. This is Claire and Sickton joining you from Southern California. We are delighted to have the opportunity to be able to give comment. Huge thank you to this council for being open-minded to these ideas. We think that this is incredibly important when it comes to both, as the last speaker mentioned, allowing folks to become homeowners who could not do it with an additional income source. In addition, it's very responsive and aware of the reality that many, many families live in multi-generational households, and being able to have an ADU will be wonderful, whether it's being able to have a space for your adult children to live on your property or for your parents to be able to live on the property. And as we know, Sonoma is an aging population, and for many of us, being able to have an ADU for a caregiver so that we can age in place is also going to be a huge advantage. So thank you so much, Council, for your open-mindedness and you're willing to look for solutions.
Thank you so much for your comments. Any other comments?
We're just bringing in Caleb Weeks.
Very good. Mr.
Yes,
Weeks.
good evening, Mayor Lowe, council and staff. Callum Weeks, Policy Director with Generation Housing. I do just want to echo briefly some of Fred's comments. I completely agree. Finding a way forward where we can obviously deed restrict some of these units to a lower level that actually accommodates, our workforce is definitely paramount to our collective success. And I would just encourage, I'm sure, Christina is more than aware of this, and I'm sure many of you on the council are as well, but Napa-Sonoma ADU actually has a wonderful suite of incentives that they devised and actually consolidated into a single document. It's very, very helpful, very informative, and could be the tools that you need to essentially achieve, exactly what Fred is advocating for and what we would encourage as well. So I'm happy to engage with you on that, or you're obviously more welcome to reach out to Scott at Napa-Sonoma ADU and connect with them. But I would certainly suggest if you do proceed forward with affordability covenants, keep them relatively short. Most people don't want to commit to an ADU incentive that is, tied directly to the homeowners, over the course of 20, 30, 40 years. They're probably more inclined to do 10 years, and then maybe you could get them to re-up after 10 years. So just something I'd throw out there. But again, all of that is found in the incentives document that they produced many, many months ago. And so I would strongly encourage looking to that further. And with that, thank you so much. I'm glad to see this moving forward, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. And we still have another public comment. Please, Ms. Dunn, please.
Veronica Napolis, 18092 Gregor Street, Sonoma. Thank you very much for allowing me to comment. This is an if-then question. If the city of Sonoma were to adopt a vacancy tax that includes second homes, how would this affect the ADU? So if the main house is not rented, would that be considered, the ADU be considered as the vacancy? So this is just something I'm just throwing out there. Thank you very much.
All to be understood and analyzed at some point. Good question. Thank you so much. Any other questions, public comment on this item? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. We'll bring this back to the council to see any further comments or perhaps a motion on this. Any further comments? Mr. Ding.
Before we move for motion, I want to know, in order to meet the RENA number. So my understanding is, if the street, build up and a brand new unit could be treated, accounted as a number. If we treated this an ADU and then the limited, it's the potential for the future. Can you explain?
Yeah, so our ADUs do count towards our RENA numbers. The way that they're counted, it's a moderate income unit that is not deed restricted. And the way we came to that conclusion was I worked with a bunch of the property management companies in town and got data on what they were being rented out for and compared that to what our affordable housing income limits are. So they were renting about $2,000 a month, which is in line with what a moderate income unit would be, but because they do not have a deed restriction, they're counted as not deed restricted rather than deed restricted. I don't believe we can deed restrict ADUs, but
there's nothing in the ADU law that says you can do that. I think the intent is to encourage as many ADUs as possible, and by deed restricting them, it makes it much less economically viable to actually develop one.
And ADUs are really different from what's been brought up before, the SB 9 units. So they can be, sewer and water, things like that have different accommodations. And, it's a lot of shared space. Sometimes it's shared walls. and the provisions for the transit stops. So SB9 has a similar provision for location for transit, but that definition is really specifically defined as a high quality transit, which means there's head times of like 10, 15 minutes, where the ADU law, it's basically any transit stop. So the state law regarding ADUs is very different from the law for SB9. And so we've been trying to respect that and honor that with our proposed changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good clarification. Yes, Mr. Willender.
More of a comment than a question. I think that this reflects a lot of hard work on the part of both staff as well as the commission. And I just, I'm very pleased with what I see, and I think it does meet the intent, even though I don't like Sacramento telling us what to do.
Thank you.
I've heard that about you. So. It's
Mr. Mayor,
true.
if I could just
No, I know, for sure.
If you would mind, Mrs. Mayor, just to
Yes, please.
respond to the owner occupancy issue.
Please.
So one of the bills that went through, I think it was the AB 871, said you can impose an owner occupancy requirement after January 1st, 2025. So we're still in the period where we cannot impose an owner occupancy period. There's essentially a window of ADUs that are permitted between 2018 and 2025 that you can't impose the owner occupancy.
So we could have added a provision saying after 2025, you're required to have it. The recommendation is to not include that.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, could we not just use between now, today, and you said 2025, to evaluate how successful the ADUs are functioning, and then if they're, again, meeting the intent, then not to impose another restriction on it would be at least, I think, worth considering or evaluating.
Yeah, that was certainly within the council's discretion.
Yeah, we don't have to do anything before then. And at that point, we can do something, and I don't think we need to do anything, in advance of that, because things will change between now and 2025, and this will be likely one of them. So I don't think it's worth investing any time in wordsmithing at this point. Any questions, Mr. Vice Mayor? You have none? Any more? I'd just like to say thank you again for this. Again, we're moving along, doing what we can. It's not perfect. Nothing is. We're trying our best, and I do recognize you, Ms. Ferrar-Rivas. My screen goes in and out, and so do you, unfortunately, my friend. So, but anyway, please, but thank you, and I want to recognize Ms. Ferrar-Rivas for any comments that she may have.
So just a question in regards to the topics that Mr. Alabak brought up, and also the potential incentives that document presented by Generation Housing were any of those aspects considered of how to look at with ADUs, that they would not only be moderate, but there's the potential? It sounded like from what you were saying before, we couldn't deed restrict, so I guess I'm a little confused as to how do the incentives work versus deed restriction, if there's possible to do incentives?
Yeah, I can't comment on whether or not it's legal to deed restrict. What our research has shown is that the units that we do have are affordable to moderate income households. So in essence, they are affordable by design. And we didn't feel that there was any need to impose additional restrictions. The affordable housing documentation can be very cumbersome and can make an applicant not want to pursue that path. And our goal was really to encourage ADUs and to remove as many barriers as possible so we could get as many housing units.
Yeah, and I guess my concern is for the low and very low income. And I understand for the moderate, the missing middle, and maybe it is with ADUs that this is just not the best approach to really support low income and very low income. But I just, wanted to know if there was consideration of how that could possibly happen.
Yeah, the ADUs really are more of a moderate income level housing, and to provide flexibility for homeowners. For low, extremely low, the way we've tried to address that is through our the amendments to our inclusionary housing ordinance. We amended that last year to require extremely low, low, moderate, and we introduced a new median income as well. And so that's really through multifamily housing and has been addressed through in that manner.
Well, and I was just wondering if there was a possibility, let's say that, which I don't think there's many of these, but let's say there were one owner that owned, a number of different ADUs that they were renting, whether or not our inclusionary housing guidelines would be applied.
Yeah, the inclusionary housing laws would not apply to an ADU, so they would apply to a new housing development, and ADUs are not counted as an addition. It's an additional dwelling unit. It's not a new primary residence, so they don't apply to that.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
Just for clarity, there are deed restrictions. It just doesn't have to deal with rent. It's runs with the land. They can't sell the ADU, correct?
Correct.
That's it. So there are deed restrictions. It's just
not about affordability.
Okay.
Very good. There are other forms of deed restriction. We tend to use that as meaning one thing. That's a good point. Thank you so much. All right. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I'd like to recommend we approve this item as presented.
Just a point of clarification.
Yes.
Would you like to approve it as amended based on the changes that Ms. Tierney brought this evening?
Yes, I'd like to make a recommendation that we approve the revised copy of what was presented this evening.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions regarding the motion? Seeing none, if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Madam Clerk, before we
Yes.
take the roll, I would just like to remind Councilmember Farrar Rivas that before we take action, you are supposed to inform us whether or not there's anyone who's 18 years or older in the room with you, and if so, your relationship to that individual. Under AB
No,
2449.
if my cat comes in, only 11.
Cat is not a legal person, so thank you.
Tell that to her,
Let my
Kat.
cats know that also.
All right. All right. We've clarified lots of things here. All kinds of new information. Right. If we can call the roll and not the cat. Yes.
Vice Mayor Gurney,
Meow.
Councilmember Wellender,
Yes.
Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Councilmember Farrar Rivas,
Aye.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you for that. Very well done. All right. Moving on to the regular calendar. We first have an update on fiscal year 22-23 budget to actuals discussion, consideration, and possible action to adopt a resolution regarding the mid-year budget amendments to the City of Sonoma's operating and capital budgets for fiscal year 22-23. Ms. Garcia, you are on. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Liz Garcia, the Deputy Finance Director. Before you tonight is an action to approve the budget adjustments for the mid-year adjustment. The fiscal year 22-23 budget was adopted June 1st of 22. Thank you. The adopted budget included budget for each fund as well as a capital budget, which was tied to the 5-year capital improvement. If you'd like to see a full copy of this last year's 22-23 budget, it is on the city's website on the finance page. The city's budget is prepared conservatively. The 22-21, both TOT and sales tax budgeted numbers were less than half of the fiscal year 19-20 due to the pandemic uncertainty. Both the 21 and 22, both TOT and sales tax increased as pandemic restrictions were released. And then the 22-23, both TOT and the sales tax budgets were prepared flat based on the 21-22 actual numbers. the 22-23 operating analysis includes the general fund property taxes. The city receives payments in December and April for regular payments, and in June, the city receives a quote cleanup payment. That's anything from people that didn't pay their taxes in those first 2 installments when they were due. It could be supplemental payments. It could be corrected statements. So they kind of clean everything up, and we'll get a much smaller number in June. Then sales tax. So sales tax has been collected through January of 23. That's reflected in the numbers in these charts. There's a 2-month delay, so that's why we have to wait for those numbers. HDL, the city's sales tax consultant, has estimated revenues will be about $130,000 more than budgeted, so pretty close to where we had estimated them. And the same with the Measure V, the half-cent sales tax. HDL estimated about $91,000 more than budget there. TOT, we again budgeted that one conservatively, and right now the 22-23 receipts are pretty consistent with what we budgeted, which was pretty flat in comparison to the prior year. Fire EMS, the ambulance payments, those were also conservative, and they're coming in at about the expected levels. That number is a little more difficult to estimate, so it's more historical that we try and look at there. Business license tax, the city has received 118% already of the budgeted revenues. That's because finance is really focused on reaching out to people that have delinquent or didn't have business licenses at all, and we're trying to get them in compliance. On the next page, we've got some budget adjustments that have been proposed. These are things that many of these you've already seen. You've seen different projects come through, but now we're looking at the budget. I could read all of them to you, or they're up there on the screen. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think we can read these, thank you. Any questions from council regarding the budget adjustments, the proposed budget? It looks like it's coming in pretty consistently. Yes, Mr. Ding, this is your specialty, please.
Thank you, Mayor Lowe. My question is, we just mentioned the consent calendar, for the 7.5, the total adjustment to the $57,000, where it is indicated.
I'm sorry.
Depot Park, the heating system, and because originally we had $80,000 in the budget, but right now we got the lowest bit is $210,000, and we had a solution, and $57 and for adjustment from the budget, and then another $80,000 will be absorbed by the Mike Berger from another project. So I want to see $57,000 where is included for this adjustment.
So these items here have not been passed in a separate resolution. So Mike Berger's, because that was on a separate resolution, is not listed here. These are items that council's not seen before.
Okay. So that means after we approved today's consent agenda, and then you will make another and the adjustment.
Yeah. So Mike Berger's goes in as a separate budget adjustment number. That's going to be a separate item. These items will be another adjustment. So there's several budget adjustments that are passed throughout the year. And then we take a look at them in finance and say, okay, we've got these couple things that council's not seen yet. And that's what we're bringing forward tonight. You may have seen a resolution for some of these things, but they didn't include a budget adjustment at that time.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I want to see in the future, this $50,000 will be indicated for another adjustment. Thank you.
Question? Mr. Gurney?
Yes, and actually, this might be for the fire chief. Actually, the three safer funded positions, 311 through 630, are these one-time expenditures, or is this going to be an ongoing cost into the future?
Thank you.
Take that one.
Please, yes.
So, thank you. Happy to be here tonight. Thank you for considering these. So, our staffing has always been predicated on 3 firefighters per engine company. You need to have somebody to pull the hose, somebody to operate the engine and flow the water through the hose lines, and then you have to have somebody to back up the hose line, and that's our working supervisor. It's our engine company captain. They make the decisions on where to deploy the hose lines, what the priorities are. Historically, when we first came together, the City of Sonoma and Valley of the Moon, both separately, and when we came together, we relied on 2 of those firefighters to be career staff and 1 of the firefighters to be volunteer. Very, very successful model for a lot of years. But over the last 10, 12 years, the frequency that we can have a volunteer there to rely on that third person is just plummeted. And we still have a position available for the volunteers all the time. It's a great opportunity for development, for recruitment, retention, but we're in a place that we can't rely on that for staffing. So 3 years ago, our staff wrote a SAFER grant through the federal government, through FEMA. We were awarded $3.3 million over 3 years. Kind of powerful when the federal government says, yeah, your staffing levels aren't adequate, they need to be up a little bit higher. So that's what we're striving for. Through our consolidation of the Glen Ellen and Valley of the Moon districts, we were able to bring that 3-0 staffing, the 3 firefighter staffing, permanently to the unincorporated stations within our service area. We have not been able to do that yet with the city. The ask that is before you right now is to get us through the end of this budget. It will be something that we will discuss and bring forward to you in next year's budget as well. We are working on things both collectively, both here locally as well as regionally with the county for a countywide fire sales tax that would address the funding for these positions permanently. We also have some other local options that we can explore, but those are things that are going to take more time. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the council? Mr. Willender?
I'm curious, Liz, on when you're looking at the numbers and we're talking about the general fund reserve, and then we're talking about including the ARPA funding, there are some restrictions on how that ARPA funding can be used. Can you just enumerate a little bit further on what those restrictions are in general?
Yeah, so, and keeping in mind that these restrictions continue to change, but one of the main things is you can't use it to go straight to your reserves and beef up your reserves. Having said that, you could spend it on other expenses that you would already plan to spend money on, and therefore it improves your reserves. You just can't apply it straight to your reserves, if that makes sense. Another thing you can't do is you can't pay all of the CalPERS unfunded liability. You can't put it towards that. Those are the 2 big ones. Those are the main things.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions?
How about right now our current level of reserve fund? Did we already reach at the level before the pandemic?
I would have to go back and check that we are at the same level we were in 2019, but right now, our reserves are healthy reserves. And when we go through the budget cycle in the next few weeks, we'll be talking about that in much more detail.
Okay. Yeah, because I concerned. Before the pandemic, we have the $8 million. I want to, look at.
Yeah.
And Ms. Farrar-Rivas has a question. Ms. Farrar-Rivas, your question,
Yeah,
please.
just to follow up on that, what is the percentage that we're shooting for on the reserves?
The percentage for reserves.
I do not have the whole reserve policy in front of me. I can send that to you, but I don't have it right here with me.
Okay. There isn't a
for
state
my-
mandate. Do you know, Mr.
Yes,
Ding?
yeah. Right now, we current one, before the pandemic, that is in a 2 months reserve. And also that is a minor, suggestion during our council, the policy, the meeting. And I want to suggest maybe we can increase and from 2 months to 3 months for on the reserve fund, prepare the future disaster or the emergency purpose.
I will say that this city has a very strong reserve policy, and that's the operating reserve policy. We've got several different reserve policies. So we will definitely talk about that in greater detail at our general fund first budget meeting. We will definitely talk about reserves in greater detail.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, are there any questions from the public regarding this item? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I would like to look for the motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Ding. Is there a second?
I will second. And I
Thank
also would like to thank the past city council for their approach during a very difficult time.
Oh, thank you so
Kept us
much.
in a
Thank you.
very healthy position.
Mr. Ding and I like that.
Thank you so much.
No, you're right. It was, there's a lot of thought that has gone into it, and there will be further thought as we prepare the next year's budget. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, if the clerk would call the roll. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Gurney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wellender,
Yes.
Councilmember Ding,
Aye.
Councilmember Farrar Rivas,
Aye.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay. We are in request of a 5-minute break, and we shall have a 5-minute break. We'll see you soon. Ms. Farrar-Rivas, you may take a 5-minute break. It's quite disgusting. I believe 5 minutes is up, so we will come to order. Thank you so much. Council Chambers will come to order as well. Thank you. Appreciate it. Moving on with the agenda, we are on item 9.3, second cannabis dispensary, and we are looking for a staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm Laura Simpson, the Interim Planning and Community Services Director for the city. Before you tonight is the question of the consideration of whether to allow for a second retail cannabis dispensary in the city of Sonoma, and if so, to then direct a request for proposals process of staff. So at council's request, we're bringing forward some background information, sort of to bring you up to date on the history of where we are. So in June 2019, council adopted 2 ordinances allowing commercial cannabis businesses in the city, including 1 retail dispensary. Later in that year, in December, council adopted the administrative regulations, the application process, and cannabis fees to allow 1 retail storefront and 1 retail non-storefront cannabis business. So in January of 2020, a request for proposals was issued. There were 10 applicants, and later that year, after the evaluation process, in October of 2020, Spark, the existing cannabis dispensary within the city, received its use permit. Later in April 2022, that is the actual date of opening for Spark, which began its business at 19315 Sonoma Highway. Going back a bit, in April of 2021, the council approved allowing for a possible second dispensary. Then later that year, in November of 2021, council adopted 2 resolutions updating the RFP process and the fees. They requested staff at that time to return after Spark had been in operation for 6 months and report on the progress and how things were going before a decision on a second dispensary would be made. Also at that meeting, there were some changes requested in the request for proposal process that would take out the site selection portion of it and just leave that after the selection of an applicant had been made. They would bring a site forward through the conditional use permit process. And those changes were made in the attached request for proposals that was before you this evening. So in April, tonight, we're reporting on Spark's operations. They actually have been operating almost a year now, but at the time this report was submitted, it was about 10 months. So we have 10 months of reports. And this is to allow council to consider whether to allow a second dispensary, and if so, to direct staff on the next steps. So in terms of the existing dispensary, from April of 2022 through February 2023, this year, total gross receipts reported were $3,752,553.77 total gross receipts. What comes to the city at a rate of 4% in taxes is $150,102.15 over a 10-month period. In addition to the tax, there are community benefits which Spark must provide, and they have been meeting that based upon their quarterly reports that have been reviewed by staff. Annually, Spark must provide 5% of its profits, or a minimum of $20,000, whichever is greater, to provide assistance to the Sonoma Valley Educational Foundation in addressing mental health and trauma issues, and La Luz Center in amounts as determined by Spark. And Spark will add to its current compassion program, giving up to $4,000 a month worth of free product to those most in need of cannabis and cannabis products for medicinal purposes to residents of the city of Sonoma and immediate surroundings. They also partner with the Sweet Leaf Collective, a charity organization that has been providing free medical cannabis to HIV and AIDS and cancer patients in the Bay Area since 1996. And they sell Sweet Leaf Collective's accessories in the store in addition to identifying residents of Sonoma and the immediate surroundings who are eligible to participate. Spark also pays above living wage as defined by the city, and Spark will achieve a minimum of 80% for the hiring of locals. They provide a labor peace agreement that includes card check neutrality, and based on the quarterly reports that have been submitted, they have complied with their community benefits obligations. Staff has also done site visits as well. In terms of surrounding area dispensaries, Sonoma County has approved 9 dispensaries in the county area, and they've reached their cap, so they're not, in speaking with staff, they're not proposing to, they would not approve any further dispensaries, but there are 2 that are near Sonoma. One is at Low Firehouse, 15499 Arnold Drive, which is about 4.5 miles driving distance from our existing dispensary to the north. And then 15 Fremont Drive is another dispensary that is 5 miles to the south. Neither of those have opened yet, but they have been approved. So they could open later this year. So if one of staff's recommendations for consideration is if a second commercial cannabis dispensary were to be allowed, perhaps consider a geographic restriction or distance restriction. You could propose a buffer from an existing dispensary, or do something such as say, we have one on the west side, perhaps require that the other be on the east side of the city. Or Healdsburg recently approved up to 2 dispensaries in their city, and you could carve out areas where it's not permitted, such as in the plaza, which they have done. So with that, staff is open for questions and to consider the recommendations before you.
Very good. Okay, this is the way it's going to go. I know there's a lot of people here interested in this item. So we're going to take questions from the council. After the questions, we will ask for public comment, and then we will return it to the council, and the options will be, you can make a motion, a different motion than has been suggested, no motion, and so forth. So there's not a recommendation, in other words. It's unlike other items that come before us where they're recommending approval. In this case, we have information, and it's, we can do what we need to do at this time. It doesn't mean that you can't consider it at some other time or whatever, but there's no recommendation from staff at this point. It just to consider. Okay, so we shall do that. So let's start out with questions from the council. Yes.
No, please.
No.
Oh, please.
I always say easy.
All right.
There you go.
Quite simply, I'm curious as to how they report, Spark that is. How do they report the compassion program proof of accomplishment?
They do provide detailed information that is confidential, so we cannot release it to the public because we have agreed to keep that confidential, but we review that information on it's a quarterly basis.
Could you refresh my memory in history? When the council originally approved the idea of cannabis within the city, there were 4 components originally. There was 1 dispensary, and then there was a second one, and then manufacturing and a testing lab, correct?
Yes.
What was that second one?
So there was a non-storefront retail
Non-storefront.
business.
Thank you.
And just to follow up on Mr. Wellender's question, has anyone ever applied for a non-storefront?
Not to my knowledge, but there have been delivery permits that have been.
How many delivery permits do we have in the city of Sonoma?
I'm only aware of for Spark, and that's the only one that I'm aware of. And
But there are other companies that deliver into
there
the
are,
city of
yes.
Sonoma.
Yes, so I don't know the number.
So perhaps we'll learn more through public comment. Mr. Ding, do you have any questions?
Yes, I'm wondering, that is for retail, as in known front doors and the sales, do they have the reporting requirement to the city?
The non-storefront?
Yeah, second one, that is the retail non-store.
They would have a requirement, but there hasn't been one that has been gone through the permitting
Okay.
process.
Okay. How often they report it to the city?
Monthly in terms of their sales, their gross receipts, that's a monthly report. And then for the other reporting, it's quarterly.
No any fees or taxes assessed on this, right? Just the information report or?
No, there's the 4% cannabis tax is received by the city.
Okay.
So that is received.
That is, what I mean is this, the retail, no front door, sales, right?
Oh, the
Yes,
non-storefront?
Yeah, it's not a Spark. That is the,
There hasn't been one yet.
okay. Nobody applying yet?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Ferrer-Rivas, you have some questions? Can't hear you.
That helps.
I mean-
So, no, you asked the questions that I had, so that's why I lowered my hand. Around the non-retail space.
Yeah, non-retail space.
Well, thank you. I'm sure other questions may come up or comments as we go through the public comment. So let's open the public comment, and we'll go from there. Yes, question, Ms. Clerk? Pardon? Well, how many people are here to speak on this item? Let's just take, I think we'll be okay with 3 minutes. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Please.
Good evening, council members and esteemed mayor. My name's Eric Pearson. I'm one of the operators of Spark, one of what will soon be 4 dispensaries in the valley. I'm here today to urge you to wait on the process to permit another retail dispensary in our city. As we are aware, the California cannabis industry is fraught with structural problems. Illicit operators, overregulation, and the oversaturation of stores make it a difficult environment to operate in. When we applied and opened our store, we relied heavily on the words of the previous council and city staff that by applying, investing considerable resources, and becoming the city's partner, that we would be the sole operator in the city for some time. We found a location, committed to an expensive rent and historically sensitive remodel, committed to our partnering nonprofits to give back, committed to the city's tax, and invested heavily into our local team of employees, many of whom are here tonight. Moving the goalpost now is not fair to us, would cost the city future tax revenue, and would jeopardize the nonprofit contributions we make today. I thank you for listening to me tonight. If it's not plainly obvious at this point, the proponents of a second dispensary here tonight are part of an organization that we competed with and defeated in a highly competitive process. Some of these folks have teamed up with a new out-of-town operator who lives in San Francisco and who is organizing and financing this continued quest for another location. Despite the attempt to make this look like a local grassroots effort of concerned citizens, it is not, and I trust that you will see through this. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for allowing us a chance to give some input tonight. My name's Tim Kreitz. I oversee operations at Spark, including our farm in Glen Ellen, our manufacturing operations, and retail locations. As part of my role, I coordinate initiatives to support the communities we operate in. Much of our leadership lives in Sonoma County and is based here, so we have a lot of incentive to invest in the community here and give back. We work to create jobs. We support local producers and have worked to expand and support the growth of the cannabis industry in Sonoma County. We give back to the communities we operate in and see that as core to our mission, and that dates back to the founding of the company as a whole. As someone who lost my spouse to cancer at a very young age, I take great pride in our compassion program. It's something, you know, that encouraged me to join the company and work with Eric and the charitable work that he had done in the past. We've invested a lot of resources in setting up in Sonoma County and the city of Sonoma in particular. And we're very grateful to the city of Sonoma for giving us the opportunity to get a head start here, because as Eric mentioned, it is very expensive to set these operations up. The commitments we make with the sales tax and the compassion program and the community initiatives we do takes a lot of resources. So it's this partnership with the city that's allowed us to do this successfully. We are going through a terribly challenging time in the industry currently, where there's compression in the market prices. We're seeing cultivators fall off left and right, and increasing competition in other jurisdictions is really crushing a lot of the retail industry as well, at a time where we really need those outlets to support the back-end supply chain side, and keep it viable, especially to protect the legacy farms. So another component of the local work that we do is to support the local producers and farms in our community, and specifically in Sonoma County. And whether that's going in, you know, as the fires are bearing down on these small legacy farms, and bringing that product into our facilities, you know, in the evening, on weekends, and in emergency situations. We do that whenever we're asked. And we really formed very good partnerships with the local legacy farmers that are left. Again, I think the partnership with Sonoma has helped our business.
We're out of time,
Okay.
but thank you so much
Yeah, thank
for
you.
your comments. Okay, further comments?
Good evening. My name is Andrew. I'm responsible for licensing and compliance for Spark, and I file those quarterly reports as well as the monthly tax reports and all the other reporting we do. So I'm pleased to be here this evening to speak to you. Thank you for your time, to both the council and staff. I'm here this evening because I think a second dispensary in Sonoma is both ill-advised and unnecessary at this time. Before I tell you why, I want to just touch on the previous process a little. As we've heard tonight, the previous council set out to allow 2 dispensaries, 1 storefront and 1 non-storefront delivery. After a long process that the previous council and a lot of applicants worked through, it turned out that nobody actually wanted to operate a delivery-only store in Sonoma due to the extensive delivery options already available here. Today, a quick look online at Weed Maps or any of the other listings shows that there are between 5 and 10 licensed operators that deliver into Sonoma, in addition to countless unlicensed services that deliver into Sonoma and everywhere else. Many of these, of course, paying no tax and providing no community benefit to the city. So today, as it stands, that delivery-only license is still available, and yet we're being told that there's a need for more cannabis in Sonoma. There is also 3 additional dispensaries poised to open just outside of city limits. We heard about 2 of them tonight, and there's another in Glen Ellen, or possibly Kenwood. I always mix those up. And still numerous out-of-town delivery services that deliver into town. Adding an additional license to such a small community risks oversaturation. Another jurisdiction in California recently licensed roughly 1 dispensary per 4,000 residents. It's about what Sonoma would be doing by adding a second, just shy of that. But as a result of oversaturation in this town, numerous stores have closed, changed hands, or are for sale at below market rates. This is just one example of oversaturation driving instability in the market, causing turnover in rentals, and undermining the local economy. Is oversaturating the market by permitting a second dispensary in Sonoma during a volatile time in the cannabis industry the right move? At this time, I don't believe there's a need for a second dispensary, and having seen what's going on across the state, I think it's a risky policy to oversaturate a nascent market. I respectfully ask you to protect Sonoma's existing local operator and table the discussion of a second dispensary. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Further comments?
I'm going to try to keep this under 3 minutes. Josette Broziker. I want to state first up front, everyone knows how honest I am. I do not have a financial or business stake in any of this, nor do I know anyone who does. I would also like to mention that our local area and all of California will be served by permitting and supporting well-run dispensaries. Only by treating dispensaries like other businesses and permitting more will make a dent in the illegal market. Well-run dispensaries support local growers and manufacturers, in addition to lowering prices through normal market competition and serving recreational, medical clients and emerging cannabis tourism. And also, there is a misconception, as I've written to all of you, about the unincorporated areas and the dispensaries in the pipeline. Let's first take the firehouse location in Glen Ellen. In September 21 of 2021, the county gave the operator the go-ahead, but they must upgrade sidewalk and public frontage to comply with ADA permits at their own expense. They must also complete design review, secure encroachments, and building permits. None of this has happened, though the operator has stated they wanted to open second quarter of 2022. In addition, neighbors have stated they will pursue new and different legal options once again, as they did before the Board of Supervisors overrode them this time to stop the dispensary. The other locations are even farther behind. The county has issued permits and no action has been taken. As over a year has passed, these permits may expire. I will be checking with the county planning to see if indeed these permits may have expired. I think that we have to look at this differently than what we're hearing here. And there is no financial interest from any of us that are speaking for this. I find that to be really disheartening to hear. I hope you've all read my detailed email where I detailed all of this documentation. And thank you for placing this on this week's City Council agenda. I am hopeful and grateful that this community now has a path forward that will be beneficial to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, City Council members and esteemed Mayor. My name is Tess Kofoid. I also work with Spark. I am a mom that grew up here in Sonoma County. I came from the tourism industry. I wanted to get involved in cannabis because I believe in shifting the conversation and creating welcoming world-class cannabis experiences that rival walking into a tasting room, which I really believe we have done at Spark. People talk about well-run dispensaries, and I really believe we have one here in Sonoma. People in the community have stood before you at previous meetings and called us a proof of concept and said that we have shown that cannabis works here in Sonoma. You've been reminded that one of the city's main goals is to increase revenue, and you've been told that adding a second dispensary will do that. But there suddenly won't be more people that use cannabis just because there are more doors here in Sonoma. I have to ask you guys to think about a neighbor that you might have that doesn't consume cannabis. If a second dispensary opens up here in town, do you think that they're going to wake up and say, there's a second dispensary, I'm going to start smoking pot? That's just not how it is. It won't mean revenue will double. The reason we have been such a good proof of concept is because of the volume that we see at our store. We are not at max capacity. There are not lines around the corner. Our current volume affords us the opportunity to operate at the highest level and give back to the community. You saw our robust community benefits earlier, which is clearly really unique to the cannabis industry. We donate to the Sonoma Valley Education Foundation and to La Luz. We offer discounts to seniors and veterans 7 days of the week. We run a compassion program. So if you pile on a second dispensary on top of the 3 that are coming to the valley, we won't be able to operate at the high level that one might that we are, and one might speculate is the reason that this community is deeming us a proof of concept. So we hope you will continue to support us. We want to be great operators. We want to be a part of this community. We're so proud to be in Sonoma, and we really appreciate everything you guys have done to support us. Thank you.
Are there any further questions yet, comments? Please.
Hello, my name is Jessica Flagg. I also work for Spark. The limited addressable market that we have here in Sonoma is already going to shrink because of those new dispensaries that we've all been discussing that are opening in the valley. As a result, revenue is going to be taken away from the city. Adding a second dispensary in Sonoma only means that we will have to fight even more for the limited addressable market that will be here. There will be a race to the bottom, and while this race to the bottom might seem good for consumers, it's actually very dangerous because it makes the cannabis industry even more volatile. If we're racing to lower prices, the city is making less revenue, and we would be forced to change our operational standards. You don't want operators that are forced to cut corners. You want good operators who make sound business decisions and support the community. Now is not the time to put our operations or the city's revenue at risk. Now is the time for you to help protect us and make sure that your proof of concept is actually able to succeed in Sonoma. Let us continue to be strong operators who support the community. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Further comments?
Hello, my name is Joshua Reich. Thank you very much, Council and esteemed Mayor, for letting me address you. I do work at Spark. I'm in charge of safety and security. We work to keep our customers happy by providing them with an educated and helpful staff, a large product assortment, and an inviting in-store experience. We also pride ourselves on keeping the Sonoma community safe. Tomorrow will be our 1-year anniversary here in Sonoma, and I'm proud to say that to that date, we've never had any major security issues or safety issues. This is largely because when you chose us as your dispensary operator, it was because we'd had a long, successful history of cannabis operations and a robust security protocol. Our team is experienced, and we've been operating cannabis in California retail stores since 2010. There are very few operators that have this level of experience. You're looking back at this past year and you're thinking, this year's been great. You haven't had any issues or security problems with cannabis in Sonoma. I'm not saying that opening a second dispensary will create or cause any safety or security issues, but I do want to remind you that it's been a smooth year because you have such experienced operators looking out for this amazing community and for the safety and security of it. Please allow us to continue operating at the highest standards, which allows us to keep Sonoma safe and secure. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments?
Hello, council members. My name is Jesus Cavillo. I am a member consultant at Spark. I've been working there for a year, starting tomorrow. It's been a pleasure working there, and I've seen firsthand from people who are part of the compassion program, to people who come into our store that have said that we have, done wonders and, providing cannabis for people for medicinal need, for us cancer patients to live more of a comfortable life. With opening another store, we'll just be lowering our prices and risk our business. I'm really proud of working here at Spark, and we're good a part of the community. Please support us by allowing us to operate a successful dispensary. We need you to focus on the community, not spreading cannabis revenue thin. And as someone who's grown up, born and raised here in Sonoma and gone to the high school, I see lots of people every time I go shopping. So you can tell it's a very, very small town, and I don't think we need a second dispensary while we can focus on other things such as housing here in Sonoma, because rent is expensive. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Further comments?
Good evening, Council. Mayor Lowe. My name's Robbie. I work with the retail department at Spark, and I'm here to express my concerns about potential opening of a second dispensary and what the long-term sustainability of cannabis in Sonoma. I've experienced I've experienced the impact of a second dispensary opening within a small addressable market through my work in other cities. And I know intimately the volatility that it could cause other licenses. We built a loyal customer base here in Sonoma and with the opening of another dispensary, that customer base could be split. We're already concerned about the 3 other proposed dispensaries opening just outside the city. Because product selection is so limited within the industry, there'll be redundancies and offerings at all of the dispensaries, which could force the dispensaries to go into a price war, which would result in a decline in sales and revenue. If our margins start to decrease, it could force you to have to revisit the tax rate. My background is in traditional retail, and I'm not opposed to competition. I do believe that competition can drive businesses to improve their products and services. However, with the cannabis industry still in its infancy, I believe that it would be premature to allow a second dispensary in such a small town. Instead, I would urge the council to consider a moratorium on new dispensaries until the market has matured and our business had a chance to become more established. So I sincerely hope you approach this with caution and ensure the long-term sustainability of cannabis in Sonoma. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Justin Morgan. I work also with Spark. So product selection is suggested by advocates of the proposed dispensary, and I hope I can address that with a little bit more detail. If you went into our store today, tonight, you would see 91 different brands available. I know because I was quickly scrolling through them and counting them on my phone about 10 minutes ago. Beyond that number, our team's goal is to really tailor Sonoma's menu to what Sonoma customers want. We do that strategically by analyzing sales data, historical trends, etc. But the most valuable data is by speaking with our customers. Anytime our customers have feedback, recommendations, even an occasional critique, we listen. For example, requests for locally farmed flower here in Sonoma County began rising after we opened our store. Moon Valley Cannabis, which is owned and operated by Sonoma locals, were mentioned often, and they were brought onto the menu based on that feedback. I hope this lends some credibility to our general ethos as a dispensary, to listen to the community, to thoughtfully curate to their needs. I think our team really excels in that respect, and we have a decade of experience doing so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further questions from the public before? Okay, yes.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, City Council. My name is Nick Gergich. I live at 654 Barcelona Drive here in town. I'm a local. I grew up, I went here to the high school in town, the schools, all of them. And I'm proud to say that I have been working at Spark for the last year. I have a passion for cannabis education, and sharing it with Sonoma has become a dream come true. I think it's why the notion of having another dispensary in town is dangerous and volatile for both the community and my job, as well as the jobs of my friends who I work with. I'd like to use my time up here to show you how we help customers find products. Our team is here to tailor a special experience to each and every member that walks through our doors. If someone asks for a product or a brand that we do not carry, we always let them know that we are happy to carry any products. And even if it's not something that we currently carry on roster for everybody, we're happy to carry products for them. We do not send anybody out there to our doors with a no. We are always happy to help our community and to support them. It's been my job, and I love doing it, and I love teaching people about cannabis. It's all about learning what customers want and what they've needed, and I feel like we've done a good job filling that need. The addressable market is not getting any bigger, and not knowing the product selection or having somebody that doesn't know how to sell it isn't really an issue. I have to ask you to protect my job and the jobs of my friends, as well as all of the wonderful things we do for the community. Thank you so much.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor Lil. I am an employee of Spark. I am also a resident of Sonoma. We are not at capacity, and I see no need for licensing a second dispensary to be made a priority at this time. Is this really the most important thing for us to be focusing on as a community when we don't even really need it? What about focusing on ways we can improve schools? We definitely need more affordable housing. I'd love to see us put our time, money, and effort into education. I encourage you to focus on what Sonoma really needs, which is not a second dispensary. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from, please, and then we'll go to Zoom after.
David Eicher, and I'm incensed. I am not affiliated with any other dispensary. I am not pushing any specific dispensary. I've been here asking for the second dispensary because my wife has not been able to get the product she wants. She has went to Spark and asked if she could get the product, and they said, well, yes, but we can get a whole case. And a whole case would, at I think $90 a bottle. That was a lot of money and would probably not be any good by the time she got to the end of it. So now she has tried delivery, and but now she goes up into Santa Rosa to there's a couple of different dispensaries up there she goes to. So this is money that if they had a second dispensary, you'd be getting the sales tax. You get the additional 4% tax. You don't get it for deliveries. You don't get it when my wife drives up to Santa Rosa. Hopefully the second dispensary will have it. And it's interesting that so far the only opposition that you have had is from Spark. And 1 year ago, when the city council was talking about adding a second dispensary, they said, give us a year so that we can get established. It's been a year, they're established, and now they're asking you to wait again. I'm sorry, I usually don't lose my cool, but I just can't help it by some of the things that were said about me and some of the lies here. And as far as the dispensary in Glen Ellen, you can go to the county site right now and permits and see if any permits have been pulled for that. The last thing you will see there is September 2021, where they got the approval for the a permit, but they have not moved forward because of the expenses of the ADA and other things. So they've not moved forward with that. I'm sorry, my heart is racing. So ask about, and they also talk about having, there's 3 dispensaries coming. I haven't heard about that third one. They haven't mentioned what it is. I'd like to do my remaining time here. This is where we're going to speak on Veronica Napoles was unable to stay, and so I have briefly something that she said here. Even though there are delivery services available in Sonoma County, there are so many products that it helps to speak to an attending bartender and salesperson for specific varietals, percentage of CBD and THC, etc. So the delivery is not the best option for people that are looking to see what's going to help them the best. I see I'm out of my time, out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ecker. Further comments? That's all right. Take your time. It's all good.
They're my fun shoes. This is so much fun. Good evening, everyone. I'm Perry Ellis, Paniawa, 1140 Beasley Way, here in Sonoma, for 32 years almost. Let's see. I'm a member of the Sonoma Valley Cannabis Group, and I have no idea about this San Francisco connection we're supposed to have. I was born and raised in San Francisco, but that's it. I feel like a broken record player here, constantly repeating for the last 2 years that we need a second dispensary here in Sonoma. there's plenty of population here to support it. And I've been at this, I said, for 10 years, though some of our members have been at this for 6 years or even longer. The prior city council willingly allowed a monopoly, it's a monopoly, here in our town for a cannabis dispensary. It is time for competition with the approval of a second dispensary. And we need to get this going forward. We need to have a choice, affordability, and fair competition for anyone suffering with medical difficulties without further delay. I myself have had 5 different surgeries in the last year, 1 more due in May, so I kind of know what I'm talking about, because I think maybe age and my medical condition is going to get to me where I'm going to also need to use cannabis, which I support 100% for anybody that does have medical issues, that it has relieved their pain. Okay, and I just think it makes sense to allow compassion, competition, choice, and cannabis, my 4 C's, to prevail this evening. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Further comments?
Gil Latimer, Grant Court, Sonoma, Sonoma Valley Cannabis Group. Good evening to the City Council. We meet again. You all know our talking points. We've gone over them and over them and over them almost ad nauseum. Ask the Vice Mayor. So I'm not going to do that tonight. I know that you all received a lot of emails recently, and a year and a half ago, you received a lot of handwritten postcards. So that's a lot of people who feel that we should have a second dispensary. We have over 200 members. They consist of consumers, patients, industry professionals, attorneys. All those people, all the people I see here tonight are from one company that's scared of competition. This is a free market society. If you can't make it with 2 dispensaries, then maybe you have to find another location. HDL, the city consultant, said that the city could easily sustain 2 dispensaries. And we're not talking just about the 12,000 people in the city of Sonoma. We have to consider the Springs as well. You can consider from Shellville all the way to Glen Ellen. That's 40,000 people. So that's a pretty fair number, and there's only 1 dispensary right now that's serving technically 40,000 people. You know, so HDBL. See, this is my paper. It started out with a lot of nice typewritten stuff, and now it's just riddled with notes. So they wanted a year, got their year. I think it's time to move on. I said, so I submit to you, all good council members, and to all the citizens of Sonoma and the Valley, that we move together with all due alacrity, with thought and seriousness of purpose, to issue the request for proposal and resolve this issue to the benefit of all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings and salutations, council members present and those
in front of a beautiful tapestry. My name is Richard Silver, and I live in the Springs. To begin with, I want to congratulate the A, B, and C team from Spark. You've done an extraordinary job. You've done over $4 million in the year. You've donated to the city and charities and done good work. However, there are 30-plus wine tasting rooms. I don't think any of them said, oh no, I don't want competition, even right next door. How many restaurants are there in town? How many people are employed in industries where the service and product selection provided is key to keeping and growing a customer base? Now, the economics, I have a degree in international economics from the University of California, Berkeley. I've never heard an argument, except in Putin's Russia, that a monopoly benefits people. And you all know that. What I am here to say is, you understand the benefit of not restricting anyone willing to put forward $12,000 for an application and maybe a couple hundred or $500,000 to build out a business, unless they really think that they can be successful. And whether it eats into their sales or not is really up to whoever is in business. Ladies' clothing, restaurants, gym memberships, whatever. I don't see in the RFP #1 that there was a quid pro quo between the city and any operator. We're going to protect you. Now, we're not going to define how long it's going to take you. They're already profitable. Plus. So let's continue to support their being successful, serving the community, but there is no reason why this council or any elected legislative body should restrict any operator from offering and wanting to come in and pay city taxes and property tax if they own the building, or any of the annual fees. I know Jack likes annual fees. And so I encourage you to put everything aside, you know, the sob stories and this and that. They do a credible job. In fact, I have been a customer. I found the service and the selection met my needs. I don't like to be told I can only go to one place. I can only buy whatever someone else selects. You're all reasonable, educated, intelligent, and you know what the right thing to do. I encourage you to do it. 3, 2, 1, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any, oh, please.
Thank you, Mayor Lowe, council members. My name is Nick Caston. I'm here on behalf of Soulful, local Sonoma County dispensary. I want to first take a moment to thank you all for your service, and for those folks that are at home and in your lives that give up for your service as well. I know it's not difficult on any night, and it sounds like tonight might be a long one. We're really excited by the potential to open a dispensary here in Sonoma. We currently operate successfully in other Sonoma County jurisdictions, and one of those jurisdictions is in Sebastopol, where we successfully operate actually also with Spark as the only other operator, and we only know them to be an above board and compliant operator, which is not common in this industry. It's very difficult and competitive, and knowing that we could be coming into a jurisdiction where your other operator is playing by the rules, that is a positive for us. We also think that businesses differentiate. Our offerings as a retailer are different than those of other operators. We have completely excluded indoor cannabis from our flower product line as a commitment, part of our commitment to the planet. So we don't in any way, shape, or form bring in indoor cannabis. That reduces our carbon footprint from our supply chain. We also give back to the community. You'll hear more from Eli Melrod on this later, but our current campaign, our current donation campaign for 420 this month is First 5 Sonoma. And if we had a dispensary here operating in the town of Sonoma, our donations from that campaign would be going to First Five Sonoma, as they are from all of our other dispensaries, supporting childcare throughout the county. Also, we're not talking about opening up tomorrow. Your process is not a short one. It's rigorous. You're talking about 2 phases. We will have to go through a selection process with you and hopefully prevail to be an operator, find a property, and then go through a conditional use permit process. We won't be opening up in the next 12 months, not because we wouldn't want to, but because that's not just feasible with the way government works, and we all know that. So we ask you to take the first step today, continue to support Spark, and hopefully support us coming to town as well. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for Zoom.
We'll first be bringing in Eli Melrod.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you so
you're
much. Good evening, Mayor. Yeah, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Eli Melrod. I'm a Sonoma County resident and the co-founder and CEO of Soulful, a Sonoma County-based retail cannabis company. I founded this company as my dad is a pancreatic cancer survivor who has relied heavily on cannabis to manage his health and wellness, and it's our mission to educate our community on the benefits of responsible cannabis use. Tonight, I'd like to voice our support for the RFP process for a second cannabis retail in Sonoma. Having more than one retail cannabis operation is quite common throughout Sonoma County jurisdictions like Sebastopol, Cotati, more recently Healdsburg, deciding to do 2 licenses. And, you know, with Spark, have been able to operate quite successfully in Sebastopol, which is a very small town, and there also are, dozens and dozens of competitors just a short driving distance away in the city of Santa Rosa. As Nick mentioned, we are deeply active in the local community and feel that we'd be a wonderful fit for the town of Sonoma. As part of our mission-driven culture, we do regularly invest in local give-back campaigns, such as the First Five Sonoma County campaign that Nick mentioned. We have seen that there is a lot of demand for a second dispensary in Sonoma. In fact, we actually have quite a large customer base that currently commutes from Sonoma and outside of the area to our other locations in Sonoma County to access the products and services that they're unable to currently get access to. We're very eager, to participate, and we really do believe that even with greater community benefits, that there will be, some level of tax revenue increase. It's probably not, a 2x, but there are definitely folks who may choose to shop at our store versus some of the other stores folks can drive to in the area, and the consumer choice is generally, great for residents in the industry overall. So that said, we really appreciate your time and consideration and are eager to participate in the process if the city decides to move forward with one, and look forward to hopefully a long collaboration here in the city of Sonoma. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Is there anyone else?
No one else is raising their
All right. We'll close public comment and move it back to the council. So we've heard lots of comments. Yes, we've received many emails, of course. At this point, I want to know what the will is of the council at this time. Anyone like to make a motion or have a comment? Ms. Ferrar-Rivas, you might be first. If you have anything to add, we're happy to entertain at this point.
Sure. This is a very difficult decision because, and I think it's helpful to hear all of the different sides. For me, it's looking at, kind of what is the analysis in regards to the potential client base. I don't think that, it is our job as a city council to restrict businesses, but at the same time, I do think for a business that is entering into cannabis, which is an emerging industry, we do want to go a little bit more, add some capabilities of helping that that business grow in a healthy way. Being have previously a small business owner, I will say that I know what it was like to build an industry that was not a traditional industry, and it was always very difficult, but also very exciting when other competition came in. I mean, that was actually, kind of great. This is good. But what I don't understand, and haven't done enough of the analysis, is the consumer base in Sonoma and what is saturated or not saturated. This is where it's very hard. I would say I can see both sides of the positions, the two different positions that were offered here tonight. But so I'm trying to really think seriously about what is the best way to move forward. But one of the things that I did want to state, just kind of, even though we see these big numbers in regards to the gross revenue and the taxes that we're getting from Spark right now, being established is not directly related to the amount of gross revenues. It's also related to, excuse me, is the amount of net income that you have. And so whether or not, even if, what level of profitability do they have now? So that's another consideration, although I go back and forth whether that is really something that the council should be taking on as our responsibility to determine. So it's just a very difficult decision, and I'm a good, sometimes, maybe not as well tonight, I've got the COVID brain, but a good debater. I could probably debate both sides of this, and I think that that's what makes it so difficult.
Thank you. Mr. Gurney.
All right, well, I will agree that it's a very interesting dilemma. I've heard things spoken tonight about monopolies and competition, and I appreciate all those things, having some experience in private industry and understand how important those considerations are. I need to look at this, I think, from what I and the people that elected me think Sonoma should be. And one of the things that I can't quite get over is the fact that the city of Sonoma is a little over 2.1 square miles. And we have one cannabis dispensary that was approved through a process that I was not part of, and I recognize that. We have reportedly 2 additional dispensaries within 4 to 5 miles of the existing dispensary. Granted, they're not open yet. They may never open. And when I say that, it occurs to me that there's an opportunity for anybody that wants to have another dispensary in the Sonoma area to partner with whoever owns these other properties or whatever they're doing out there. I just don't think that because of the density of the number of dispensaries in the city of Sonoma is really what Sonoma is all about. Yes, you can use the winery argument, but that's been around for a lot longer than legal cannabis. So, it's not an easy decision, but I think there are other ways to address some of the concerns in the audience, and I will leave it at that for right now.
Anyone else have a comment? Mr. Rowland, do you have any comments?
I have a question first, if I could ask our interim planning director, please. Thank you. In your presentation, you had mentioned something that I was not aware of. The Sonoma County has limited the number of permits they will issue.
Mhm.
And have they issued all 9?
Yes, they said they will not approve anymore.
And then the only time that might change is that if one of the permits that have been pulled actually doesn't come into reality, and then in kind of like our wine tasting places down around the plaza. If one shuts down, that opens up an opportunity.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you know, possibly of those 9, how many are actually in operation within the county?
I don't know. I could follow up with them.
No,
Sorry.
that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ding, do you have any questions? Or comments?
Yes, yeah, questions or comments. Yeah, basically, I would like to redress, the concept. The city government is not just only focused on money. We are not a tax collector. Instead, we take care of our community's wealth and health. So that when you both parties address a lot of the reasons, and I fully understand, and for us, because we received different information, we are entitled to share some of the information with you, and maybe you haven't heard. Last year at this time, I support the second dispensary store, but I said we needed to wait. So that today my position is the same. We are not ready to move forward yet. My point is, our fellow council member and raised a very, very important question. You mentioned, Patricia, when we assess the tax, that is beautiful, $150,000. But this $150,000 assessed on gross sales. We don't know what's happening for its net profit. So that's the reason before the visitor meeting, I did my research. I contacted with the owner. I said, hey, what's going on? We are happy and received the $150,000. And then here I just only can share a little bit because that is a private company. I want to know. So far, this company still is losing money. So and also they have the debt. Everybody knows that. People visit that store. It's shining. It's totally different from the restaurant they used to be. They spend $1 million. This is the debt still over there. They are tax contributor. They contribute a tax to us. And we don't want to see they are losing the money. They are bleeding. When I look at it, this the whole procedures, we have the missing the concept when we set up ordinance procedure. Actually, I just only in a small part of this. I was the previous council people, especially Rachel Hundley and Amy Harrington and Logan Harry. And at that time, because it's kind of a movement, they are very positive. They want to move forward for our local economy, and also it's kind of a trend. I fully support the last month or the last year, Governor Newsom signed a lot of the bills, support, promote, enhance this cannabis market. So I also totally agree. So when I look at our the policy regulations, one thing, if we want to support the second and the store to be opened, we need to review our ordinance first. For example, 4% assessed on gross store, is that right? Is it make sense? Because they are losing the money. And then and we need to take the money. How? We don't want to say, see, this company, they are losing money, sometimes goes up. And then no any dispensary stored in here. That is the minor concern. So the minor point is, we still need to keep wait and do more research and think what is the best model which is suited to our local. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd like to just say a few things, sort of piggybacking a bit on what Councilmember Ding said, because we were at the same meeting, and I agree with you, and I think your thoughts are well-founded. But the thing that I'm not, so concerned with the 4% that the city gets. I'm very concerned with how much the state is taking at this point. The state is, I think, with all good intentions, the state anticipated more returns from the cannabis industry than have actually materialized. And as a result, it's actually crippling the industry that they really want to promote. That concern has risen over the last year and has made me deeply concerned about the business in the state in general, and of course in Sonoma specifically. I'm also concerned about, and I'm glad it was somewhat mentioned in the staff report, about location. Because when we do go for the RFP, and at some point I think we will, I'm not hearing a big willingness tonight, I have to admit, but when we do, I agree with Councilmember Ding. I want to relook at that ordinance. And although I don't think we should micromanage the location, I think we should look at making sure that their locations don't inhibit their profitability. And if they're too close to one another, I have a feeling that would happen. And unlike wine tasting, where people come and on purpose go to multiple places, and hopefully they're next to one another, that's not true with other kinds of retail businesses. We did have an opportunity, the city manager and I, to speak with Supervisor Gorin today. She did talk about the two cannabis industries that are slated. The one was sued by the neighbors, and actually they won their suit. So they're just waiting to take care of the business issues regarding their encroachment permits or whatever all they have to do, ADA compliance and so forth. So I'm not hearing a motion. I could be wrong, but I'm not hearing a motion tonight. I don't think that means that we're closing off the discussion. I'm hearing Councilmember Ding wanting to bring this back and look at some financials. I heard some questions from Councilmember Farrar Rivas. I think we need to, Mr. Rollander still has some questions he wants to see, some comments, and we can go from there. Okay, Mr. Rollander.
Thank you. I've attempted to do my homework, and in my travels over the last couple of years, I've actually have visited 3 dispensaries to get educated. And I will say that all 3 were much more sophisticated, and all of them presented themselves very well as retail. I am glad I got clarity this evening about what the county is going to allow. And the county is going to allow at this point 9, and 2 are kind of in a holding pattern. But the reality is, from my perspective, is that even though they are in a holding pattern, that's not in our control. We don't know whether it will go forward or not. I don't have clarity on that, but I do know that construction at Arnold and Madrone is not unlike most projects where you got encroachment permits and you've got site changes to meet ADA. That's just part of it, and unfortunately we're going through a period of very expensive construction, and that's just a reality. And I do believe that any storefront, any business is going to incur significant expense up front. I am aware of at least a number of the dispensaries that are within probably about a 35-mile radius from here. And as much as I do believe in competition, I also believe that there is a lot of diversity there available. It may not be most convenient, but there are very few industries that small communities provide everything. I love Costco. I've got to drive to Costco because they offer certain things that I can't get elsewhere. But that's just a point. So at this point, I also am concerned about the impact, basically with the health of a business, when two more come online that are within 5 miles. And so at this point, I am not interested in entertaining an RFP tonight. That doesn't mean that a year from now or 6 months from now, when something else comes back online and we're beginning to see the impacts, that we can make a more thoughtful decision. I know that historically, I believe indirectly was accused that we were violating the Sherman Antitrust Act, and I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. And so at this point in time, I'm not closed-minded ultimately to a second one, but at this point in time, I am, because I do want to make sure that we are not going to be creating a pathway where we end up with two struggling businesses. And we are a small town, and a statement was made not long ago about the fact that I hate in our small town to see what I call see-through buildings, empty storefronts. And that's what I wouldn't want to see, whether it's the current operator or if the second one opened up. And we are a small town of 10,700, and yes, we have a longer market. But I do also think that my fellow councilman made a legitimate comment that if a couple of the applicants or the permits that have been pulled are struggling financially, there is an opportunity there possibly to partner. So again, that would allow for more options, more choices. So at this point in time, I would not support issuing an RFP.
Yeah, just one last comment. This situation actually reminds me of alcohol licenses. And when I was police chief, there's a principle of undue concentration used at by the state that allows cities to make a determination as to whether or not there's an undue concentration of licenses serving alcohol in an area. And so I kind of look at this in a similar fashion. And what's interesting about that, when I was police chief, you didn't have gas stations that had beer for sale. And today I see that gas stations in Sonoma, for whatever reason, has evolved, and I see there's ABC filings in the window to allow them to sell beer. And so the point I'm trying to make is that was that was a number of years ago when we didn't have gas stations selling alcohol, but the environment has changed, and I suspect that the environment's going to change on this as the industry becomes more sophisticated. I think it's unfortunate that we're here having the conversation and that this issue was kicked down the road, and that's my term, and it may be unfair, but I hate to think that we're going to kick it down the road again, but I know that right now I'm not in a position to do an RFP. So,
Any other final comments? All right, so I'm gonna, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Patricia. Old-fashioned hand raising, there we go. Please, don't be on mute. You're still on mute.
I'm looking at my notes there.
There you
are. Yeah, I don't like kicking things down the road. I think that I agree that we want to support healthy growth of this industry, and I want to have a better understanding of, like, we're seeing to dispensaries in other cities. But, I want to look at that based on, well, what is the total population they serve? And so what is the right amount when it's time? I can hear that there's another business that wants to come in, and hopefully they've done their own analysis to see that maybe this will work here. But then what happens when these two other dispensaries come on? And even if you end up with 4, does that guarantee that they have exactly the products that one person wants or one other person wants, because you still don't know if that's going to happen, because if you're running a business, unfortunately, you face, when you're a wholesaler, you have to order certain amounts, right? And so there's a lot of business things you have to take into consideration. So I don't know if there being 4 is going to solve specific individuals' requests. So I would have to understand, kind of the whole product line and how that is how things are distributed and what's being asked for the most first. But I think if we are going to, because I'm not ready yet to make a decision with this, but I think what we want to do is have a timeline that we can say, yes, we will relook at the ordinance. We're going to continue to, we're going to look at what we believe is the concentration level for this industry, follow the 2 businesses that the county has permitted that haven't opened yet, get a better understanding of why is there not someone locally opening an online business. I guess there's enough online businesses. But so that we have all those answers and set a date as to when we will revisit this, so that we're not just saying we're going to just push it down the road, but say we are going to go through a process and let's wait before setting a date, but it's either 6 months or a year, but list out these are the things that we're going to do, and then we're going to, after we look at all those things, and report back to the community when we're going to revisit the actual RFP question again. So that would be my goal.
Okay. Well, we've identified a few things that we want brought back. So at some point, we will put that on the agenda to bring these things back to take a look at it and perhaps plan the timeline, or at least look at the timeline at some point. If I don't have any other comments, I'm going to move on to the next item. I'm not hearing a motion, and therefore I think we are finished with this item for tonight. Aside from the recommendations, I believe staff has received. Yes, Mr. Hollander.
Picking up on to what Councilman Ferris Rivas has just made, I think there would be value in actually identifying a time, because for 2 reasons. One is I would like to know when this is going to come back so that we can really focus on other stuff. This has been lingering and been expressed. So I would like to think that, I would like to at least throw out for discussion that 12 months from now, we have a conversation, not with an expectation that we necessarily are going to send out an RFP. But I think that in 12 months, the industry is going to be 12 months older. We're either going to see the fact that the other 2 have become online. We might have had a chance to see how that implication, or how that might impact or not. But I think that would be fair to actually at least consider something a little bit more definitive, that the topic will be brought back for discussion. And whether it's 12 months or what, I just think that would be better rather than just tabling
Well,
it.
do we need to decide that tonight? Because
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I think what I'd like to do is on the next item, we potentially are going to have a new city manager who has been a part of this process, and I'd like to give him the opportunity to have this conversation and also look at our ordinance and see when we bring it back, there may be other things in there that may be more helpful to the conversation that we're having. In other words, we may put in some financial goals and some concrete figures, because I know Mr. Ding would like that, and I'm an old math teacher. I like concrete figures as well. I think your analysis of the net versus it was very well taken. So let's work on that.
Are we tabling it? Is that the
Well, it's not.
technical term?
We don't even have to table it. I mean, just no action is taken tonight.
Right.
We've given direction to staff to put. We had some questions, and we'll bring it back another item. And at some point, it may be 12 months where we bring it up again, and maybe less.
Fair.
Okay. All right. I'd like to move on. Okay, we are at 9.3. Which is discussion, consideration, and possible action to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an employment agreement with the city manager, David Runeman, City Attorney, and Mark Linder, Interim City Manager. Recommendation, adopt the resolution. And City Manager, contract. Comment from
I will
the
go
Interim
ahead
City
with
Manager.
a report on this. Yes, as you know, there are two decisions that a city council makes that are critical. One is the budget, and one is your city manager. So knowing that, this council has been extremely diligent in working on this. We've done everything from community feedback through our consultant to extensive interviews, reference checks, background checks, and so on. We started with 57 candidates. Then we went to 12. Then we went to 7. The council did online interviews with 7, narrowed it to 3. We had the 3 interviewed by the city council, myself, and a technical committee comprised of key department heads of the city, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and so forth. And out of that, the council has selected David Gwynn based on his experience, qualifications, and actual fits. And I think fit is a key part because everybody actually in the top 7 were qualified. And then everybody in the 3 were extremely qualified, and any of them could have worked. So you're bound to fit, which is where you are in this kind of situation. David brings us nearly 2 decades of experience, 17 years with the city of Santa Rosa. He was known as the go-to person, which is why he went to whatever the mess went. He worked with the water department. He worked with planning, economic development. He worked with transportation, public works. He was assistant city manager. And then because of his interests in the work that the Federated Indians of Groton Rancheria were doing and their social programs and other programs they were doing, he went there roughly 3 years ago, and he has been the executive director of government operations, a very similar position to city manager, just for the nation here. And he had a board of 7. Here he would have a board of 5. He is qualified academically with his Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, a highly regarded institution. He got his Master of Arts in Organizational Development, Sonoma State. He's been actively involved in emergency operations, the Housing Action Plan, and as pointed out by the mayor, cannabis policies. So he brings a wide range of experience that I believe is a good fit. The proposed agreement has him starting May 8th. The compensation package is competitive and appropriate for the work that he's going to be doing here. It's certainly not at the top, and it's not at the bottom, but it fits Sonoma well. Yes, we've done the background checks. Also, as a message to the community and to the staff, we are proposing a 5-year agreement. Certainly that doesn't stop a council, this is still an at-will position, doesn't stop the council from going a different direction. But we want people to know, and he's agreed to this, that, so with that, you have the details in there, and I will turn it back to you for questions or action.
Any questions of Mr. Linder? Yes, sir.
Just a couple.
Sure.
I'm just curious, the deferred compensation is, rather than making it part of the regular compensation, what was the genesis behind that?
The big issue behind that is because he was away working for Rancheria, the Groton Rancheria, he fell out of the CalPERS original, what they call classic, and went into a reduced benefit package called PEPRA. So one way that he can continue to build on his retirement is to have his own, what we call in our business, 457B plan, which he'll be contributing to himself. And so the 5,000 is his choice. Instead of building it into the package, it goes into his deferred compensation plan to help his retirement. Now, he's a young man. I think he's in his mid-40s, so he's not going to be retiring right away, so he'll have an opportunity to build it up. But that's what it's about.
Okay, thank you. Second question, and this is not specifically for the individual that we're talking about, but it's
Sure.
past experience. Under severance, I see it that it is released without cause. We all spent over $100,000 with the last experience that we had, and in my mind, there was cause, but for some reason, we ended up, having to pay that out. So are things different? In other words, if there is cause for his dismissal or her dismissal, don't care who it is, but the position, if there is cause, are we still contractually obligated to pay basically half a year's salary?
It says without cause, and the cause is outlined in the contract, the various elements of cause. It's going to be, it's always an interesting debate on that, but to me, it's different. Cause is that there's something real specific.
Yeah, there's specific items that are that are included in the definition of cause, and if the council terminates a manager for cause, no severance
Okay.
is available.
Okay. That's perfect. That's just what I needed to. And the last one, this is just a departure from what we were told as far as the packages that were put together, that we now have added 5 days of bereavement.
We have 5 days, which the state has adopted. We have 3 days that are paid, which is what we've had.
There's a new law that the legislature
new law
adopted
that sets the
requiring
five,
five days of bereavement, and under our previous policy, it was 3 days of paid. So under the new policy, it's 3 days of paid and 2 days of unpaid. So that
Okay,
we meet
great.
the 5 days, but
That's
there's no
state
change
requires.
in the budget impact.
And my last concern, and it's a fairly minor concern, that is under the waiver of the requirement of to live within 10 miles of City Hall. I understand that our new city manager lives in Santa Rosa, which is great, but in the event that he decided to move, because of past experience and what I have felt has been a compromise to the service that has been provided by people working for the city because of distance travel, I would not want to find, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about not having, I'd like to think that there's going to be some discussion on it, and maybe that the performance will be so stellar that he could live wherever he wants. But I'm basing it back on what I've observed in the last 5-6 years of people living out of the community. So can I just get a comment
Sure.
on that?
I think the big thing is you look at his track record. He's lived in the Santa Rosa area for many years. I see no indication of doing anything but being in Santa Rosa. And that's just outside of that. I think if he'd moved anywhere, it'd be here.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other comments?
Good questions, though. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Rivas, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine with this. I asked several questions to our city manager earlier, and they were all answered. So.
Thank you.
That's great.
All right, do I have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, public comment? Hey, Mr. Olabach, welcome back.
Hi, Fred Olbach again. As long as I've stayed this long, I might as well throw in my 2 cents. I was really happy with Kathy Capriola when she was city manager, and I really enjoyed meeting her and have a good relationship with her. And I met with Mark once, and I haven't had a chance to get to know Mark that much. But so I'm hopeful that the new city manager will be like Kathy, and that I'll get to meet with him and establish a relationship, and then I'll feel more like a part of the community, which I haven't really felt for the last couple of years because of all the kind of churn at the city. But I have a specific question. So this is not a guaranteed 5-year contract, but it would be guaranteed if there's no cause for dismissal.
Well, nothing's guaranteed, Mr. Olabach, but the terms are for 5 years, unless something changes, basically. And you know, the rationale was people like you who are saying very similar things. You know, we want someone who expresses a commitment to stay. And quite honestly, most city managers, superintendents, and so forth don't do 5 years. They three, because they don't know if they like you guys so much, right? So anyway, I think we're happy that somebody has expressed an interest in wanting to stay, and we hope that they do. Okay, any other questions from anyone on Zoom? I think we've lost Patricia. Yes, please make a comment.
So the one things I just wanted to say to let Mr. Alabak know is one of the reasons why I was so in favor of Mr. Guin is because of his history of really, and his excitement that he expressed of really working with the community and really being very involved with community members. So I just wanted to make that comment.
And I asked Mr. Guin, how do you say your name? Because it is spelled in a way that wasn't familiar to me, I might add. So he texted me back, and I told him, I said, a lot of people misspell and mispronounce my name, and it's only like one syllable. But anyway, so he wrote G-Y-U, like Guin, like Guin, like Guin. Guin. And so that's, we're all going to have to learn that, but I wrote it down so I would remember it. So, Guin.
Thank you for that, Sandra.
Guin. Okay. All right. So now we know how to pronounce it. We've gone through the contract. Is there any more public comment? Yes, one. Please.
Yes, we'll bring in Tom Conlon.
Please. Mr. Conlon.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment tonight. I'll be brief. I just want to say that I'm quite pleased that the council seems to be moving in this direction to work with Mr. Guin. I have personal experience in his role, working with him in his role up in the city of Santa Rosa, shortly after the Tubbs fire, when things were quite harried up there. I saw him operating under calm and cool through what was quite a crisis. And also subsequent to that, in helping move forward some of the early climate action for the city of Santa Rosa. So I just want to say congratulations, and I'm looking forward to a long and productive engagement here in the city of Sonoma with this new candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conlon. Anyone else? No more?
No one.
Okay. Is there a motion?
With excitement and enthusiasm, I would like to propose that we accept the proposed contract with our new city manager, and May 8th can't come quick enough.
Do I have an exciting second?
I second.
Oh, that was very exciting, too. So moved in second and third and fourth and fifth. And there's no questions on the motion. If the clerk would please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gurney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wellender,
Yes.
Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Councilmember Farrar Rivas,
Enthusiastically, yes.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries
Thank you.
enthusiastically, yes.
Enthusiastically, we are looking forward, and we'll be informing the community of more exciting things to come and getting to meet Mr. Guin.
I would like to say thank you for Mark,
Oh,
the wonderful work
absolutely.
during this transition. Also, I would like to remember our previous and the city council, we work together and build up this kind of platform,
Mhm.
and then we can find the daily what we are looking for.
Well, you'll have me for one more meeting, and then you'll have Mr. Guin.
Guin.
I was close the first
Guin.
time. His first meeting will be the
G-Y.
17th.
Guin.
And you've set up a special meeting for him that day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're going to do something special. We'll let everybody know. All right, we're at commission and committee roster, and this is where I wanted Ms. Farrar Rivas to explain to me what the situation was. I know it was a previous item as well, but can you explain what happened? Because then Ms. Barr then said something to me, and all of a sudden I got very confused.
Sure. So basically, what I was just correcting the notes. And in the notes, what it said was that when there was more applications, we would also be choosing an alternate and a youth member. But in actuality, we would also be choosing another commissioner, because I have not appointed a commissioner yet. So there would be my appointment, the alternate, and the youth member. So just to correct that
Okay.
aspect of the note.
And that would be for which committee are you?
That's a fire and safety.
That's the
It's traffic.
safety.
And it's
I'm sorry,
in the
not
minutes
fire
that she's
safety,
referring
traffic
to.
and safety. Thank you.
It should be fire as well? What?
No, I
No,
said
no, no.
it's traffic safety.
Traffic
That's
It's in
what
the
I thought.
minutes.
I heard
It's
fire. I'm
7.2.
like,
Yeah.
no.
As to the traffic safety, today I see one the potential applicant. She is interested, and also in a long time here, maybe we can consider. The reason is Nancy Parmalee, and was a member. We
Yes.
should actually, from my heart, I want to see our local, generations, and then they can really understand, just like a torch carry over.
Yeah.
Her name is
Well, she has to apply, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so ask her
Okay,
to
I will
apply,
ask her
and
to
then at the
apply.
next meeting, we can
Okay.
adopt it, correct, Ms. Barr? Is that right?
We can bring it back to the next meeting. You do have someone that had applied already.
Correct.
And there was one individual who had applied some time ago that I was going to send a note to see if he was still interested. And if you have that individual, whoever applies before that meeing, we can bring those applications.
Okay,
for
so let's
consideration.
make sure on the next meeting that we have the traffic safety, the replacement and the appointment that Ms. Farrar Rivas has, and then the youth appointment, all of it. Are there any other committees that we need to attend to, or no?
Only the ones we spoke about that are Group A, not part of this same.
Well, I'm only talking about this. Okay. Anything, any other comments on the committee rosters or anything? Okay. All right. We are at adjournment. Thank you so much. Wait. One more thing. Mr. Willander is going to
Please,
say something.
Would it be possible to consider putting on a future agenda the whole topic of safety at Traintown? And the reason I bring it up is that I know for still a mystery, we put lights in on Highway 12 up by the library. But in terms of volume and safety and the user group, I would love to at least find out why we haven't given consideration to something up at Traintown.
I think there is something under consideration, but we'll definitely have an update on safety, and not just Traintown. I mean, it's the crossing by Adele Harrison. There's something that is missing from that intersection that needs to be there, and it's my favorite agency. It's Caltrans. What can I say? We're trying. Caltrans, wherever you are, start making some moves here. Okay, if hearing nothing else, we are adjourned.
I just